we were getting the response of, oh, I voted for someone because of this, and then it was all open board, because of the borders, and the borders are closed, and it's like the borders have never really been closed nor open. The borders or the borders, and however you enforce the immigration policy is just that. So, yes, that has always been my thing with either party's administration. If you want to address it, address that one law, because that's the primary law that everyone comes in on, that everyone talks about, which is the asylum. Everyone's just coming over and pouring into the country without actually knowing that it's by the process of asylum, and the process that is being implemented is written by current law that has not been changed since it was initiated.
Yeah, so shouldn't we stop it? Shouldn't we stop it all from happening until we can come up with something that works, something that ensures that the people that are coming in under asylum actually deserve asylum?
No,
Why not?
because we've had enough time, and I think if we have
You just
enough.
said it wasn't working. Why wouldn't we make it work?
Oh, I didn't say it wasn't working. I just said for those who believe it isn't working, you start with that law. And if you don't believe it's working, then we have had
Well,
enough examples to show us
so
it doesn't work.
we can stop what we're doing until we actually craft a new piece of legislation that fixes any problems that we have, right?
No, I don't believe that. I think
When,
until you do, you craft the new law, you pass it, and then what you do is you put a moratorium on the asylum claims to then be ensure that you then are putting in place the infrastructure to implement the new law. You don't
why
just
don't
stop
why
until
don't
you
we
have
put the
something.
moratorium on right now so we can stop anybody from coming in, and that makes it a whole lot easier to fix the process and set up a new process in its place.
Well, it doesn't make it easier or harder. That's the
Well,
illusion.
it does because we'll have less people coming in and less people that have to be tying up the court systems and less people that have to be tying up the border patrol and ICE.
Well, that's negligible. That's
Uh,
negligible. We have a so
what number is negligible to you?
in comparison, a few a few tens of thousands, thousands.
Few tens of thousands? What's
Comparison to what?
too many? What's too many? A million? 500,000? 100,000? When does it get to be too many? When is it
Well,
not negligible?
I mean, I was saying it's negligible between stopping it now than getting a new law versus writing a new law then putting a moratorium. At
Well,
that point,
if it's negligible, can't we just stop it now and make sure that
no,
we get
because
everything
you
fixed?
you have to follow the law that's written in place. You can't just stop enforcing a law.
We can.
That's no, you really
Yeah,
can't.
yeah. Congress can stop enforcing that law. Congress can make the law defunct. The president can stop the law for a certain period of time as well, because we're not talking about money that's being spent. As a matter of fact, it'd be money that would be saved.
Well, again, that is a certain amount of time. You're right. Okay, using your statement there for a certain amount of time, which legally you only can not, you can put a moratorium for a certain amount of time, but you
Yeah,
can't
90
just put,
days, 90 days, and then he can get it extended after that as long as Congress approves.
but not indefinitely. And
Well, he can do it indefinitely as long as Congress continues to approve it.
but that's not going to happen because
Why not?
again, because
We
you
have a
have
Republican Congress.
and we have a Republican Congress that has managed to do absolutely nothing, which is wild to me. You
Uh,
think they'd be passing?
okay, you don't have to pivot here. He can do this for as long as he wants.
No, not entirely, because if Congress, which right now Congress is not going to let him do that at all. They're
Why
already
wouldn't they? They all love Donald Trump. What are you talking about? They would absolutely do anything Donald Trump wants.
well when they're seeing the writing on the wall. They have their own political futures to
Have
think
you
about.
talked to them? Do you have some insider information that nobody else has?
I actually have talked to a few of them.
Really?
Okay.
Who?
I
S-
sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Pierre.
Oh no, no, I said okay. I'm sorry. I just didn't. That was just listening and just. I really didn't mean to speak. But I will. Who then? I'm just going to ride on the question. Who did you speak to? Yeah.
I've spoken with the Chip Roy, who is the Republican congressman here in my local Texas area, and I've spoken with the four closest to him because I'm here in Texas, so I speak with Republicans here in Texas. Uh, because as a Texas constituent, usually those are the ones they're going to listen to a little bit the most. Um, but also,
Okay.
I've been involved in
Was
politics.
he support MAGA? Was he Trump? Are you a Trump voter?
For me,
Yeah.
no,
Oh,
Are we talking
sorry.
about habeas corpus? I walked away for a second.
no,
No,
we're
we're not
not. But
talking.
that's a great topic to
Well,
segue into.
no, because you seem to think that we should fix the asylum system, but you don't really want to fix the asylum system, and you seem to think that Congress is somehow gonna, I don't know, stop Donald Trump.
Yeah,
No,
you seem to think
what,
that they're
what,
going
Donald
to
Trump is your
reject
daddy,
Donald
man.
Trump's rules.
oh, nice.
They're really not. I haven't seen evidence of that. You're going to have to present evidence that Congress has the capacity to reject Daddy Trump. From what we've seen so far, they really do collapse to any will he presents. That's what I've seen. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I've seen.
So again, I said if for those who have a problem with current policy implementations, that is where you need to change. I didn't have a problem with it. And then
Oh, well, obviously Congress doesn't have a problem with it either, nor does Trump. He just stopped it.
the thing is, from my point of view, I'm all about doing things legally, and for sure, if Trump has a problem with it, then he needs to present a new asylum law or just stop taking asylum cases.
That's what he's doing.
the law.
Yeah, that's what he's doing.
No, what he's doing is circumventing the law and circumventing Congress. He's not presenting a bill that repeals that law.
Again, he doesn't have to repeal it.
And
I'm sorry,
Shades,
go ahead.
I'm so sorry, Mojo. So Shades at the border right now. There are people that are coming through legal ports of entry, which they don't even have to, that are trying to claim asylum. And the policy under Kristi Noem right now is to reject a lot of those cases. There's been Senate hearings where she's been confronted on this and told that this is illegal, and I think she'll face repercussions in the future, but that's what's actively happening.
I think you vibrated out. Like it looked like you were kind of talking away from the speaker.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Did you guys hear me? Okay. Oh, or I'll repeat myself, and I apologize.
No problem.
So there are active cases right now where people are going through legal asylum. They're passing through ports of entry, which they don't even have to. But Kristi Noem has made it authorized where they can reject anyone trying to apply, and are turning them away actively. And she was brought up at a Senate hearing for that specifically, where she's saying that where she's being confronted on breaking the law day after day, literally hour after hour, because they're doing this unlawfully.
Right.
That's an issue.
Yeah, I saw that Senate hearing.
Yeah, that's an issue, right? We can agree on that.
Definitely.
Okay, cool.
I totally agree with that. No, I agree with your viewpoint on that entirely. And that's what my viewpoint is. Regardless of what you do so lawfully. So if you are totally against the way we're doing immigration, change the immigration law and then enforce that. Don't go around what our current immigration laws are and say that it's broken or continue using the the unalived horse language we've been hearing for better part of a couple of decades, because anyone who has control of the government in the way Trump does, he can, because his House Speaker is in his pocket, he can present a law and get it passed. They can get laws passed without the need, both in the Senate and in the House, without the need Democrats. And if they really want to pass their laws,
All right, you got to be a little more concise, man.
the Republicans in the Senate can get rid of the need to have 60 people approve, basically get past that filibuster.
They can't do that they can't do reconciliation unless it's a budget or a tax bill.
They can do it. I'm sure they can.
No,
Or
they can't.
Or they can get rid of the filibuster.
They can't get,
and they're in charge of the rules. So they
Wait, wouldn't you have to get a 60 vote to actually get rid of the filibuster?
no,
You
Couldn't
would.
the
Yeah,
could
yeah,
it,
you
getting
would.
rid of the filibuster
You need a
be
supermajority.
filibustered?
not by a parliamentary process because they could have done it when the Democrats had held the Senate. They just didn't have the will to. Um, and you know
I suppose they could get rid of the filibuster, sure. That makes everything a hell of a lot easier than Donald Trump can do whatever he wants.
that is true. So
Yeah.
again,
Then we'd all be better off, wouldn't we?
well, no, we wouldn't. But again, it's about having the ability to, and for them to make up the fact that they can't do this or that. Well, he can do. He's apparently trying to do everything by executive order. But to say they can't change the law is, obviously a false idea because they can,
I'm just saying they don't have to change the law. See, what he's doing right now seems to be working.
for right now because he's
Sure.
only going to be able to break the law for so long.
He's what makes you think he's breaking the law? What law is he breaking?
Which law isn't he breaking? As the more of the question.
Seriously? So you can't answer the question?
We should be if he isn't breaking a whole bunch of laws, and you can identify like 50. Give us one.
No, well, it's not about identifying laws. It's about if he wasn't breaking laws, they wouldn't be going before courts, and the Supreme Court wouldn't be telling him to reverse the decisions he's making. And
Man,
by the way,
the ACLU sues everybody all the time for everything.
Disregarding any court order is breaking the law.
Hello? Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Okay, well,
But
there's
the
one.
ACLU sues everybody all the time for anything they want. Happens all the time, all over the country. So to say that he wouldn't be going to court if he wasn't breaking a law
But it's
is
not the
is simply incorrect.
ACLU who's really suing Trump. It's literally
Well, a
states.
lot of these cases
attorney
are from the
generals.
ACLU.
You have other organizations, individuals are suing Trump and getting all the way to the Supreme Court because of how just egregiously he is acting against what is being implemented or should be implemented.
Sure, but he's already stopped everybody coming in from the country at the border through the use of the military that he's got on the border. He can continue that. He could probably even expand that. I agree that he is going against a court order right now. The people in El Salvador probably should have gotten due process. So yeah, we can go ahead and bring him back here and give him due process, and then deport him somewhere else or send him back to El Salvador or whatever. That's fine. But everything else he's been doing has been working pretty well, don't you think?
No,
No?
no.
What hasn't been working then?
I don't need my tax dollars going to waste for soldiers twiddling their thumbs at the border.
I don't think we need our tax dollars going to pay for illegal immigrants.
Our tax dollars don't go to pay illegal immigrants. That's false.
But they do.
They don't.
They do, because everybody gets health care in this country if they walk into an emergency room. All the children that come in the country have access to our school systems. They all get benefits from the federal government in some way, shape, or form. They're driving on our roads. They're getting benefits for children that they may or may not have in the country as well.
But that would be like me saying that no MAGA identifying person should be getting benefits from the government.
Well, no, because MAGA identifying
because,
people are American citizens.
No, because talking about getting benefits from school, there's no really benefits from school. You're being educated on American.
Does it cost money to send kids to school?
Honestly, it's not, because if we're cutting back funding for our education system, which we continuously do here in the state of Texas, everybody, not just immigrant children, are suffering. More and more our citizens are losing out. And so where's our property
If it
tax
doesn't
going
cost
to?
money to send kids to school, how could you be cutting back costs of sending kids
It
to
doesn't cost money in the concept you believe it does.
school? How do you know what I believe?
Because
You haven't even asked me what I believe.
Because you believe there's literally a 1-for-1 transaction of an
So now you're going to tell me what I believe instead of asking me what I believe?
You've already stated your belief.
I have not.
Yeah, you have.
No, I have
You
not.
said you don't want your tax dollars to go and benefit immigrant children going to schools, is what you said. That's
You
a
are
belief.
correct about that, sir. You are correct about that, sir.
That is
I did say that.
therein states a belief And I'm telling you, that's not how it works.
I did, to be fair, I did say that in response to you saying they're not getting any of our tax dollars,
But they're not.
but they are.
No, they're not. In fact, it would be the school
Again,
districts.
they're going to
Hold on.
school. They're
They're not.
taking up seats in our schools. We're having to pay for them to go to school.
It goes to the school districts, and the school districts the school boards, which are primarily conservative leaning, especially here in the state of Texas. Again, so because we're talking about the southern border, and state of Texas is
Do you
primarily
do you
impacted by
think
that.
there's no immigrants all over the country?
Well, I'm sure there
They
are, but
only exist in Texas?
well, we're using southern border, and it's using
You know there are 50
Texas.
others. There are 50 states in this country, right? You get that?
Okay,
Yeah, you realize that there are immigrants in every state in this country, right?
yes, I'm fully aware of that.
Okay, so we don't need to talk about Texas or just Texas or
But
Texas
Texas
at
is
all
a
if we don't
red
want to.
state, and Texas
There are
politics.
plenty of red states out there. Red states outnumber blue states.
Okay, you're right. We'll go with that. So every red state that implements similar policies as would be our current presidential administration, all are losing out because they're cutting back education and have been, and all line up on the list of the most uneducated amongst all the states. And it's not because of
Are you
immigrants.
calling Republicans stupid, really? That's your argument?
Well, no, because you have Democrats and liberal voters in Republican states. I'm saying Republican states are amongst the most uneducated. And I said the states as a whole, not Republicans themselves. But
Well,
Republican ran
and you
states,
wonder why you can't win an election.
Republican
Just
ran states,
calling Republicans stupid. That's just terrible.
but I didn't say that.
But you
At least,
did.
at
You're
least I
talking
can,
about
at
red
least I
states
can
and how
read,
they're uneducated.
at least I can read back your own words verbatim, and you're twisting mine. So I would say that's indicative right there.
At least you can read them back, huh? Are you writing them down? Are
No,
you reading from what
I
you
just
wrote
have a really
down?
good memory.
I thought you were an expert at this whole border thing. And now all of a sudden you can't figure out how illegal immigrants in this country are actually taking tax dollars from the American citizens.
But they're not because they don't get any federal benefits. They're not
But
allowed
they
to.
do.
It's not. It's already been debunked that they do not get any federal benefits. If you could
That
name two
that is
federal benefits they receive,
yeah, that is absolutely incorrect because the Department of Education does distribute education funds to every state in this country, and those education funds go to every school in this country based on the pupils that they have in those schools, and those pupils can be illegal immigrants or children of illegal immigrants.
but they do not receive those benefits directly. They
We are
receive
paying, yeah, they
what
don't get them
results.
directly,
No,
sure. We give them to the
no.
schools. We're still
They
paying for
they
them to go to
they
school.
receive education, or at
They're
least
getting federal funds to go to school.
no, they are not. The
They are
schools
too.
the schools are receiving or should be receiving because some don't receiving the funds from the districts, which
And
again
where did the
do
district get from? Where did the districts get funds from?
both the state primarily and some from the federal government.
Okay, so the federal dollars are going to the districts, which are going to the schools, and that is based on a per pupil count. So a kid that is illegally in this country is taking up a seat in a public school that is receiving federal funds.
But that's not the case because it's not a zero sum game. If there's
But
a
it is the case
no
because
because
those federal funds are going directly toward that kid going to school. And you just told me that federal funds were not going to illegal immigrants.
but they're not.
You
It's going to the schools.
that is simply an incorrect statement, and I just proved to you that it was
Nuts.
an incorrect statement.
It really isn't.
Sir, they use the money for the schools. If the kids are in the schools, then that means they're using the money for those kids. Ooh.
That's not accurate.
How?
Again,
Okay,
it's simply not.
okay. You guys are either gonna have to help him, or I'm gonna have to stop.
Yeah.
But you're saying, okay, you know what? I'll concede. I'll concede for argument's sake. I'll concede.
For argument's sake.
Yes, for argument's sake. So are we blaming immigrants on actually the fact that schools in red areas are doing poorly?
No.
I just said they're taking federal tax dollars. That's all I said. You said they weren't. I said I showed you how they were.
Well, they're not taking tax dollars because if we were giving tax dollars to the schools,
Oh my God!
then students would be doing better.
I thought you just said you conceded.
I conceded the point for argument's sake, but only to then make the point that if immigrants are taking dollars, then the schools should be doing better, which is not the truth.
So the
You walked,
argument,
So
really.
many
you walked
stinking
into the trap I
liberals.
set.
So
It's
I'm I'm very moderate, but the argument that really should be happening is because it is like I won't debate reality. Of course, unauthorized or illegal immigrants receive some benefits from taxpayer money. To argue
Well,
that they
shit.
don't
Now you
is
look like you're going to prom.
now we're
Now you look like you're going to prom instead of being a lawyer. What the
I
hell's wrong with
officiated
you?
a wedding. I hate you so much. But no, but the point, the point is the better argument is, and what if I were you, what my stance would be is, you know what, the small amount, and I don't agree with this. This is I'm playing your position is what I would say is okay, the small amount of taxpayer money we spend is worth it, right? Because the immigrants give us X, Y, and Z benefits, and that's the argument. It's but to argue that they don't receive any taxpayer dollar benefit is a foolish one. That's not where you want to, dig your heels in the sand. You want to argue that sure, they of course, benefit somewhat from tax dollars, but it's worth it and it's a net positive for our country. Again, I don't believe that, but that's like we it is not a possible argument to win to say that they don't have any benefit from I mean, they go to a public hospital, and have a child, they our hospitals will absolutely deliver the child. Like
So,
Oh
so if
yeah,
someone,
CB. Oh yeah,
I don't
hold on,
understand like
one
how we
second,
can
one second.
argue that they don't
Yeah, so
receive any
so
benefit
CB,
from it.
so CB, yeah. So we just saw a family where the mother and child, they were the ice agents were standing outside her delivery room, and they took her away from the child, and eventually, they let her reunite with it, but with the child. But this is the issue. Like, this is what we're talking about. Like, these are the problems that we're having with the overreach of government.
so
Yeah.
in CB, you're right. I'll give that to you that the benefits that they provide that they receive mostly, and this is comes from the states and not from the federal government. That's where this problem is that they pay more, they pay into our federal tax system, they pay federal taxes, but do not see any of those benefits.
Who pays
Whereas
federal taxes?
in federal,
I,
out of our federal taxes, but they do get
You
some
think you
state
think
benefits.
illegal
Some
immigrants
state
pay
benefits.
federal taxes?
Yes.
so I will say to his credit, there have been some studies. I'm not sure how good they are, but yeah, according to um our yes, they apparently do.
Oh,
They pay a decent amount of taxes. It is true.
I can't
I'm
remember which year in the past 5 years that one year was like a total of like 89 billion.
yeah, I'm
With
not
like,
sure why or how, but yeah, they do
Because they have
apparently.
fake social security numbers, so they're committing felonies to pay
it's not
Maybe.
federal
fake.
taxes.
Well, I
It's
mean,
not fake.
it's committing a crime to be here illegally. So I
I'm
mean,
ready to
that's
do that.
Yeah, but
also
that's just a misdemeanor.
oh no, they're
Using a
illegally
fake
giving
social
back.
security.
They're illegally giving our federal government federal dollars. How dare
Well,
they?
no, they're illegally stealing a social security number.
No, they're providing that,
But that's one way. But that's one way, and
and it's not
another
necessarily
way
Social
is
Security.
another way is ITN numbers. But I want to go
Yeah,
back real
wouldn't
quick to
that
the
mean that
host.
they're documented at that point and they're no longer illegal?
Technically, but they're also by this
Technically,
administration
we're
still
talking about
undoc.
illegal immigrants. We're talking about illegal
But
immigrants.
but but no, but this administration is still deporting people who have ITN numbers.
yeah, but that's
Okay,
sort of
but
that's
that's still not
not
what we're talking about. It's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But that's fine. You guys don't have to, but that's what's happening. And just real quick about the foreign about people who are using our hospitals. So should foreign tourists who come here, if they have something happen to them, should they not go to the hospital because it's not meant for them?
Oh no.
Good
Again,
point, Ryan.
I think that the doctor absolutely has a duty. morally to treat the person. I'm not upset with that. All
So
I was
so are they
saying was the
benefiting from our tax
all I,
dollars though?
no, you
Sure, but they're
misunderstand.
coming here. They're coming here for vacation. Who the hell
All
cares?
I was
But
saying
These
that's
guys,
but
the
was
other
why does that
people,
matter? But why does that
because
matter?
the
There's
other
the
people, because the other people snuck into the country.
so
When you
so
all
come, when
my
you come for
argument
vacation,
was
they're
your
legal.
people were saying they have no benefit, and that's not true. That was my only point. I'm not saying if you go to a hospital and you're an illegal immigrant, you shouldn't be treated. Of course you should. That's awful to say otherwise.
no,
My
but the
point
but
was to say that they receive no benefit is absurd. It's farcical.
So to add
but the
quick
argument is that
illegal
they should
immigrants.
not be receiving our federal tax dollars because they're undocumented or because they don't pay into the system, which is
Well, I don't know that that's what the argument was, but Will, go ahead.
So to
Will
add a
knows
point
more.
real quick, illegal immigrants in 2022 paid over $96 billion in tax revenue, according to the Institute of Economic Trade and Growth. Um, as for the other point that they don't receive any federal benefits, that's incorrect. I mean,
Yeah, they
police,
receive $147 billion a year in federal benefits. They're a net
right?
negative on our
that
economy.
number from? Where's that number from? Where's that number
It's from
from?
the same. It's from the same study that he mentioned.
And what's the source of that?
Ask him.
Okay.
It's the one that
But
the Republican committee used.
I mean, that's fine. But I mean, by that argument,
Oh
that
yeah,
was
that
simply
the Center for Immigration Studies, I think.
No, it wasn't. It was.
Institute for Economic something.
Yeah, that was a basis for the FAIR report. I think it was FAIR was the title of the
Mm.
Fair, the
organization.
one that's been dubbed by the ACLU has dubbed them as a very anti-immigrant.
The ACLU defends Triple K members. I don't care what they do.
Oh, not just ACLU, also the Southern Poverty Law Center.
That's awesome. They also defend people that are horrific.
And to finish off the second point I wanted to make real quick is they still
I
receive
love
federal
you,
aid because if
Maga
you don't,
Mojo.
You know, it's funny because a lot of these arguments are so paper thin, and anybody that has any sort of a brain could pick through a lot of these arguments that we make.
It's unbelievable. But I want to marry you. If you need a partner, just call me. Amazing, beautiful, fantastic.
You're cutting out, dude.
Guys are more likely to work
Brian,
for their
Brian,
benefits than non
Brian,
than actual citizens.
you got bars really bad. I can't hear. I can't understand a thing you're saying.
Oh, is this better?
For now,
Is this?
yeah, yeah, for now.
Let's say I think in that same study it showed that immigrants are more likely to work for certain benefits than actual citizens.
Okay, you can go ahead and show that to me. Till then,
No, my
we'll
argument would
take what
be
you
okay.
think.
So this is the thing is, and I let's let's in arguendo, let's assume what you're saying is true, right? It- okay, who cares? So a nation has an interest in protecting its borders to make sure it's able to control and secure its own nation state and sovereignty. Why is there always this argument of, well, I can give you a bunch of facts about why it's a net positive to have people that are not legally supposed to be here that are here. I I don't understand why people are so willing to fight that battle. It makes no sense to me because it it's like in any other country they would think that what you're saying is absurd. If you went like my friend Swiss, he'd be like they Switzerland would be like, well, they're not legally here, so why are we talking about this? Like, I don't know why it's even a discussion because
Country?
the Switzerland. I was just giving an example. The bedrock question is they're not here legally. End of story. I don't understand why we have to go further.
Do they have a
That's
history of
the
destabilizing Latin America?
Who?
What?
Switzerland? No.
Yeah, I thought so.
So you're saying that our and I know exactly what you're talking about. You think that our unfortunate background in destabilizing certain countries in Latin America for whatever reason justifies in some weird
No, no,
conjectural way.
For, no,
no. I think
for
it's
me,
a
hold on. Let me answer him. For me, absolutely.
That's absurd
How is it absurd?
because there's no logic flow through those two things. So
So if we let's say
again,
if we just
assume
Yeah, you're cutting out real bad, Brian. Brian, you're cutting out real bad.
Hey Mojo, can you let me down?
So,
Yeah.
so I'll actually
Thanks.
pick up
Thanks,
some
Will.
of
You can jump up
the
again whenever you
viewpoint
want.
Brian was getting at, is that, and I'll do this quickly. So, in
bad
effect,
argument.
it might be a bad argument, but it's
It
still a logical
is.
point to make. In having years and years and years of interfering and destabilizing the various countries from which these immigrants are coming from, has created conditions of what basically it's karma. We have consequences of our choices coming back to
Karma.
bite us, and as a
Karma.
country that also has operated on the heavy use of illegal immigrant labor.
Sure.
Remove
Good
them.
night,
You know
Will.
what? Let's remove them. But we have already seen where they have voluntarily left out of fear of these new policies that have already driven local economies, like in Florida,
Right.
destabilized.
So it's a
So
bad so I'll explain why this is a bad argument. Has the United States done some horrific things in Latin America? I believe yes, I agree with you. Is the answer so is the answer to just get rid of borders and immigration and just, willy-nilly just let anyone in at that point because
Arguing that? Who's
we've been
arguing that?
cruel. No, but that was we've destabilized Latin America, so now why are we whining about it?
Oh
Let
no,
people
no.
in. That is not a good
I'm
argument.
defending the people that are
hold on,
here
Brian. Hold on,
undocumented.
Brian. Hold on, Brian. Let him finish his thought.
No, that's it,
I
really.
know what he's going for. Just let him finish it.
No, that is one negative does not make it okay to be like, well, we did some bad things, so let's just let all of it go.
Wait,
But
we
It
wanted, okay,
doesn't
so what you're
work.
saying is that we wanted cheap bananas, so we should allow 20 million people into the country, right?
Yeah, and another question too, CB, from your fellow acronym. Uh, but listen, so have you ever looked at like the gun control laws in America and how they've been impacting how those I'm sorry, those pew pews are going to affect other countries that are in our peripheral. So, like how they enter those nations and how much harm that they cause in those nations, which is like a circular reference, right? Because then people fleeing from that violence comes right back here. So that is, I think that in particular, like that circular reference where we're doing something that could be potentially harmful without vetting people properly is affecting nations that are close in our peripheral, and then it just impacts us because we have to take in people that are fleeing from that particular violence.
So I think that
Because I
that's a
can bring it
very
up.
different topic, but
It's a very
point
relevant
taken.
to what you're talking about, and I'll bring those statistics up if you want
What I will
them.
say is that I think that if we want to compare the damage of immigration and from other countries, I can promise you that our gun control or pew pew control laws certainly have not affected our neighbors as much as their and by the way, and I don't blame our neighbors for this. It's not the government of these countries like Mexico that are the problem. It is unregulated, you know, mobs and pseudo government like actives that are the problem. And I can promise you the amount just off of I'm trying to like trying to think of TikTok language that I can use, but yeah, I can guarantee you that the net benefit that our neighbors have gotten from us is way higher than we've gotten from them, and the net negative from us is way worse than they
Wait,
have it from us.
oh, wait, you're
That's
saying that?
unless you want to go back to like 1750 or 1800. I'm not going to go back to like, that whole thing. And yes, history is relevant, but at a certain point, we have to talk about right now. Otherwise we're going to talk about history forever. We can go back to the.
Oh, no, no,
I
no,
could tell you
no,
all the
no,
faults
no. All right, you're
America
going
has.
on. CB, you're going on, dude.
Yeah.
Let's just lay this out like fact for fact. So 70 to 90% of firearms recovered in Mexican crime scenes can be traced back to the U.S. according to U.S. ATF data. Like those are facts. So my argument being
That's because we're
All right.
letting all
So,
these illegal people. That's because we're letting all these illegal
wait.
people in,
So
and we're
so
bringing them back
what
with them.
what
But there's no statistics to
what are the
prove that.
fact what are the fact wait what are the
hold on,
so
Mojo was saying something.
I studied this legally where so what are the facts and I'm not going to pull the statistics, maybe you can.
You did. I
What
just
about
did.
what about trafficking with rugs? Like
That's hold on. You want to get into that? It's us. We're
no,
bringing it
because
back here. You know
it's
that,
not
right?
coming from here. Most
Oh,
of
you're
them.
saying hold on. You're saying are people not bringing it here?
What?
No.
I couldn't hear you. Sorry. What?
Are you saying that our people? It's not the illegals that bring it here. It's us that brings it here. You know that, right?
Us as in citizens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
Do you know?
No,
Do you
that's
know?
absolutely
Wait.
not true.
All
That
it's
is
people.
absolutely.
typically
Wait. It
it
is
is
true. It is
citizens
true.
who
It is
bring
true. The
in the
vast
most
majority.
drugs.
Oh,
The
you
vast
mean
majority of
the
rugs that are coming.
demand?
Hello. The vast majority of the rugs that are coming into the country are going through ports of entry with American citizens. I will tell you the problem with that stat though, or that whole entire scenario, is the fact that people are getting addicted here in this country to these rugs, and they're getting from their suppliers. They're getting involved in gang activity, I guess, at that point, and they're being sent down there by these organizations to go pick that up and bring it back. And they have pew-pews to their head when they're told to do this.
Okay,
If
that
if you don't believe that, then I would say go talk to Los about
I
that.
wouldn't say that's a problem with statistics. That's a justifying the statistics. And that second point about being coerced, I believe is more of an anecdotal because that's not statistically proven.
No, that's exactly what's happening. These aren't
No, in the
American
80s and
citizens that
90s
are
there were
deciding, wait, stop.
sorry.
These aren't American citizens that are dropping out of high school just to go run rugs from Mexico to the U.S.
But the majority of these
No.
people, they're just Americans who are getting addicted to it. So why are we still blaming immigrants for the behaviors of
Exactly.
our own citizens? Like, I don't get it.
Because it's the illegal immigrants that are getting them addicted in the first place. It's those
No,
gangs. It's
No, you're gonna have to show me the
organizations.
proof. No, you're gonna have
Yeah,
to
you're
show
gonna
me
have
the
to show
proof.
me that fucking shit real quick,
Who do
Mojo.
you think runs where do you think MS-13 came from?
Fucking
California,
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 Yeah,
motherfucker,
yeah,
California.
yeah.
California, Los
Where do you
Angeles,
think it
oh
why do
my
you think it was
God.
formed? Why do you think it was formed?
to protect their own
We
people from other
we
gangs.
destabilize El Salvador.
No, no, no. It was to protect them from themselves from other gangs in California.
Right.
That is correct, and it was mostly illegal immigrants in the first place. And they started dealing rugs right away, and they were doing this using this type of tactic to bring rugs back into the United States.
And it goes back to my answer because we destabilized El Salvador particularly, and a lot of them came over here into LA
No,
particularly, and that's what
no,
happened.
they came here to make money, and they're making more money off of rugs
So
than they can anything else.
Without hold up,
Oh no,
without pew pews, they're not able to make money. You know that, right, Mojo?
Without
Like
what?
I'm saying, you can't make your shit right without having like protection. Without the protection, you can't make profit. And we keep
I don't know
selling.
what.
I'm saying we keep selling them pew pews to the card to the T group. I mean not T group, the card groups. So it makes them more powerful. I gotta understand.
I
Mojo, you and I
think
are both right.
no, I think that
I
they're
don't know
so
who
I
is
don't think
we.
any
You say we keep. Go ahead, DB.
I think that people
DB.
are getting confused between two very different things. One is government action, state action, and policy, etc. Meaning, and the other is are rogue groups in both countries probably that are making decisions. So I don't think that it's fair. And I know our country. You don't have to remind me of the '80s with
Or
what we
Fast and
I don't know
Furious.
how to
You can go forward
I
from there in
can't
Fast and
say like
Furious.
half the words and that's but yes, so of course that happens, but the those are two different things, right? There are individual actors and then there are state actors, meaning the government is the issue. The reality is a lot of South American countries, their governments are hard to distinguish between cartel powers that are I don't know if I'm allowed to use that word, whatever I did, and and the government itself. At the time it's impossible to distinguish between them. I guess one could try to make that argument about America, but I don't think it's the same thing. It's very hard. So
Well,
yeah, I guess it's not, it's not always illegal immigrants that are the ones that are responsible for this, but it might be Americans too. But the issue is they're coming from a country that is sort of turning their eye away from pretty illicit activities. And
But
And we aren't.
so
CB,
and
how can
that's why I said it was a change of
all right,
subject,
but
because to me it has
okay,
nothing to do
CB.
well,
with immigration.
No, 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 no.
I'm
Hold
gonna
on
get
one
back on that
second,
topic then.
please. 1 second. Hold on. So, CB, how can I think when we talk about violence, it has to go back
Oh,
to
I'm sorry, Jen. I'm sorry, Jen. I'm sorry. There was nobody else to argue.
so CB. So listen, like when there's this magnitude of violence, how can we argue the fact? And I'd like to bring it back to how many pew pews are coming from America and going into like countries that are supplying our country with drugs or drugs. And like, how do you argue the fact that there's like a lot of like cartel violence or any of that type of violence without understanding where the main source comes from? And it's here domestically. And why aren't we doing something to tighten our pew pew laws?
So on that one, I agree with you. I'm not, even though I said it was a change of subject, I am not against what you're saying. I think it's awful. I have no argument against that. I agree.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. I just think that we should talk about that as something that's like important when we.
Oh shit!
Whoa,
Oh, here, that's so cute.
that is cute.
Uh-huh.
Cute.
That
So
scared the
CB, I have
shit out
a
of me.
CB, I have a wait. CB, I have a
It scared the
question.
crap out of me too. Honestly, like what the hell
CB, I
is
have a
that?
question. So, Colorado, right? And California,
Mhm.
like how they legalized the devil lettuce, right?
Sorry, say the what?
The devil lettuce.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
You don't,
What?
MJ.
MJ?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So when you start legalizing that stuff to like Colorado and everything, don't you think it's hurting the card groups?
The
That's a
cartels.
I really no, I know. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I mean, when we start taking stuff away, like when we start legalizing like the MJ to the United States, we're actually gaining more profits from that.
So, if I
No,
may,
oh,
so
I
I'm going
agree.
to pull us
It's
back real
fine.
quick.
Yeah.
I'll pull us back here to say that um, everything that was just mentioned, pulling back to the immigration, is that whether or not when it comes from this, identifying the source of where it all began, what the destabilization, the cause of the migration, whatever that is, knowing it would take somebody with very little critical thinking to see the forethought, or even now someone with seeing hindsight to say this happened, so cause and effect, this happened, how do we prevent what's about to happen from happening out of our control? And that would be to go and look at the various immigration laws we currently have, and we've had time, and we have right now. I will condemn every administration, of the past 2 decades, but we're currently in the current administration, Trump's administration. They really want to address it. They can start with the asylum seeking law.
I have literally said that because
Yeah.
you probably won't agree with me, because I think asylum has been watered down beyond reason. Asylum laws and most countries do, especially common law countries. Asylum was always supposed to be a legal, you know, a comedy law thing where you are, you have a religious or political or a true fear that you're going to be discriminated or harmed by your country because of your political or
Yeah,
religious
I heard that
beliefs
too.
or
Did you say comedy?
Yeah, I think you.
comedy. Yeah,
In
comity,
the
not comedy as
literary
in.
meaning?
So comedy means like it's basically an understanding between countries, meaning that, like, for instance, if someone is extradited through a treaty, like, we extend comedy to that country, to that treaty, because we want peace between nations, right? Or if you defraud someone of the United States and you go and you run to Switzerland and they say you're a fraudster, we will extend comedy to their legal decision, even though they're totally different countries and courts.
I
But
think the word you're searching for is accommodations. I think that might be a little bit
No, no.
easier
no,
for the
comedy, yeah. So yeah, without complicating things too much, but yeah,
you've
I
complicated.
think that unfortunately, asylum laws were meant for people that were running from actual discrimination based on creed, nationality, race, or religion. And now it seems like we've watered it so far down that it's like, I don't, to the point where people will skip two countries and come to the United States, meaning they'll go through Mexico
But
or
that's
through
good.
Canada, and that's
Okay,
not
how do you
what.
spell this ridiculous word comedy that you're talking about?
Comity.
Oh,
It's it's a legal archaic term that sort of just means to keep, like, peace between another sovereign, right? Like, just to
And
okay.
I agree
You
with
we
you,
pronounce
CB.
the T better then.
Yeah.
comity, yeah, not comedy.
So I agree with you, CB, that might be the case, but that rather than it being a case of asylum is watered down, or the concept of asylum being watered down, the various things that would give rise to the need for asylum has ballooned up. So what would have been in the past considered kind of a rare thing that's generally maybe about government acting against the individual runs, or another potential, just like a group of people. It's now a ballooned idea that people are being actively, daily, hourly
Sure. So what I would ask
persecuted,
you is,
discriminated, and hunted.
sure. So asylum laws have been watered down very recently. And so what I would ask you, in the last 20 years, what Guatemalan or Mexican law has changed that has made it so dangerous for its own citizens that they're willing to,
Yeah, so
like,
CB, I don't know that that
that's the test. That's your
Well, no,
burden to
I wouldn't
prove.
say the laws change. It's that
yeah.
the
So
conditions.
yeah, and CB, one thing I don't know that it's so much as like what we believe what the law should have been. It's what the law currently is. And so I understand international law about like going to your nearest country. That's not what the USA upholds. And so if we want to talk about current law, we should apply current law to current law.
So yes, what you're talking about is the application, which is what I'm saying I don't agree with. When I say watered down, I
You
mean the
can, yeah,
application.
yeah,
If
you
you
can
look up the
argue.
statute, it's very clear that it has to be based on some kind of religious. I forget what, I could pull it up, but or,
Yeah, it's political. It's
it
political.
has to be
Yeah, it's
based on some.
political.
It
It's
can't be that my
political
country's just so bad that
enmity that comes from.
I'm gonna
Well, see,
flee.
I can't
and
hear you,
that's the
CS.
argument I was trying to make is
Wait,
that
wait, wait. Stop, stop. CS is obviously trying to talk. Let's CS. Thanks.
Sorry. Yeah, no, it's political persecution specifically. It's not anything based on like financial, like if you like those kind of hardships, but political persecution in particular is probably the main reason that people claim asylum. And it again, CB, it doesn't matter what you think or what international law says. It matters what USA law says. And when people come here and they lay boots on the ground, they're allowed to claim asylum within 1 year. Those are the laws. Those are the facts. And you can't change that. I can't change that unless
Well,
we go to our specific. Go ahead. Sorry.
I don't agree with you because the statute it does not say that. The interpretation, and so the way the executive branch has carried out the law in a way that is inconsistent with Congress's writing. So if you look up, I'll pull it, but it does not describe what you're saying. So yes, so I disagree with your understanding in the sense that the law is very clear. It's how it's been applied,
All right,
and which is
you're
not.
gonna have to pull up the law before you go any further
I
then.
will.
100%.
And
I was
no,
going to
I will. I'll
Wait,
pull up the
yeah, then don't
exception.
go further. Wait, you can't start
Yeah,
talking about it until you pull up the law and let everybody
sure.
know what you're looking at.
and I'll pull it up too.
I got some stats. Nah, I'm not
Uh,
gonna put. I'm
I,
not gonna put
I,
that.
I just want to say, that that CB is what he's talking about here seems to mean that Mexico, nobody from Mexico can claim asylum or should be able to claim asylum according to
No,
the
that's
laws
I
as
don't
he's
think
stating it.
that's true.
Wait, there's no political persecution, there's no religious persecution going on in Mexico.
If
As a matter
that's
of
true,
fact,
then
most
yes.
of the Central and South American countries that does not exist. These are cartel organizations. There are going to be a couple that might see political persecution, but I would say it would be limited to a small number of people, and to figure out that kind of credibility might take a little bit of time, but certainly it's not the numbers that we've seen.
And CB, I would just like to know because, like, from my understanding, this is what I've just presented was what I understand from the law. So if you could provide something that's a little bit different, then I'm totally willing to hear. But I just I'm steadfast in what I've said.
And I'm on the side of CS, CS's and understanding of that as well. And I, I, I think when it comes to even the criteria, let's say political persecution or religious, and even with against the artels, those people in a lot of those countries are inside the governments because of what has occurred over the decades. And so, like I was saying, it's not so much the watering down of our law because the law hasn't really changed, much less how we've implemented it. What, if anything's changed on our end, it's the fact that we've not funded it properly and are basically slowing down the process. But
Right.
that's about it. That's really
Right.
about
So
it. Now, the
I found it,
conditions.
and it's 8 USC, so it's a congressional act, and they talk about that
8
it's a
USC
long.
what?
So it's 8 USC section 1158, and if you
Wait, no,
scroll down,
1158. Okay.
yeah, and eligibility, it says the Secretary of Homeland Security or the Attorney General may grant asylum to an alien who has applied for asylum in accord. And you're right, by the way, if you step foot, you have the right to say asylum. But the qualifications are as follows: burden of proof. The burden of proof is on the applicant to establish that the applicant is a refugee within the meaning of Section 1101A 42A of this title. To establish that they are a refugee within the meaning of this section, the applicant must establish that race, religion, nationality, or membership in a particular social group or political opinion was or will at least be one central reason for persecuting the applicant from the country they came from. So that's, I mean, that was it always was the only reason I even know
Wait,
this
I
stuff
think
because
that's
I
pretty broad. That sounds pretty friggin' broad to
Yeah,
me.
yeah, and CB, like they
fair
have to go
enough.
like no, and oh
But
God,
it is what I said. I mean, I wasn't
no, no,
making
no,
it
no,
up.
no, no,
Well,
no.
no, no, it's not at all what you said because
Yeah.
Yeah,
belonging to a specific, some sort of a group that is ill-defined, certainly is not what you said.
Well, a
That's a
group
very
can't be
broad.
disappointed people that live in a country that they don't
Why
want to.
can't it be?
That's not
Why can't it be?
okay. If you want to make, if that's your interpretation, I would say that's terrible interpretation, and we can
That's
agree
fine.
to
You can
disagree.
say that, but the court's going to have to decide that, right?
The court will never, and I've
Yeah,
not
but
looked at
that's
many
fine. You can
immigration
say what you
cases.
think that you. That's fine. You can
Sure.
say what you think the court's going to decide, but
There's
doesn't the
no
court get to
court that would
decide?
accept, of
Doesn't
course,
the
but
court get to decide that?
of course, and no reasonable
Okay, well
court
then it doesn't
would
matter.
ever go beyond the
Everybody
bounds.
gets that's fine. Everybody gets to stay here until they're seen at court then. And if
That's
that
the
No,
takes
point.
fucking 7
but
years,
I
then they get
agree
to
with
stay here.
That's the
that.
problem.
But I agree with that. I don't. What I don't agree with is the overuse of um um. Sorry, I
asylum claims.
just
That's what you're looking for. That's what you're
y-
looking to say. And please
yeah.
walk back.
I think it's
Everyone on this
abused.
panel that was wrong because you were the only one that was wrong in this situation, and I take a hard fucking stance against people who represent themselves as proprietors of the law and then actually come with information that contradicts someone who is a layman like myself but have studied based on the fact that there's such atrocities happening with your president that you supported, and now we have to argue you because you're spreading misinformation.
Wait, me?
Walk it back, dude. Yeah, you.
I literally read the statute. It says exactly what I
Walk it,
said.
walk it the fuck
What do you
back.
mean?
Stupid.
Wait, what part of that statute wasn't clear?
No, what
Creed, nationality,
it's
religion, or
it's
a
what you
member of it.
believe. It's what you believe
I'm
to.
confused. Like,
Uh,
how is that?
so
I could not have been clearer.
Should be
so at
confused.
first it was political persecution. In general is what you started to say, but primarily that was born out of your comment that you believe that the asylum laws here have been watered down. Asylum has been watered down, and so that's when we got to this.
Oh,
And
fair enough. Okay, so my word should have been more careful. What I will say is the
yes,
application of the law has been watered down. Same with antitrust laws. The
Yeah.
law says one thing, and the executive branch carries out a very different tack
but even
on
then,
both
it's not
sides, by
been.
the way.
But even then,
So fine, if we really want to, yeah. Well,
based on the current wording, the application hasn't been watered down. It's been applied as set forth in the language. What has been the problem is the funding to ensure that efficiently that it be applied. It's being applied as it should. It's just not being applied.
I mean, race, religion, nationality, or membership in a particular social group. Like, are you going to rely on the last part of that to kind of just say, well, that's sort of broad, so
Well,
anything?
that's again, that's
Really?
for the
Like,
courts to
that's the,
decide. But if a
all
court
right.
will or won't accept it, then we need to make sure that we do what we can to ensure you get before a judge as fast as possible, not make it more impossible to see a judge. That's why we have people awaiting for their asylum claims to be seen for so many years, and then we have this perceived self-inflicted crisis, and now it's a political talking point
I
rather than actually solving the perceived problem, because it either is or it isn't a problem. If it is a problem, fix it. If it isn't a problem, don't fix it, and continue to make up delusions about it. So we are.
Hey, yeah, CB. I think you may have had a different profile picture, and I don't care if I get booted for this, but like I've lost all faith in anything that you've ever said in the past. This has been such a disingenuous conversation.
No,
Like,
I
I don't
Oh,
think you're,
don't
I don't
say
think you're,
that. Wait, don't
I
say
really
I,
don't
that.
think you're, I've
I
had a great
think
time talking to you. I don't think you're listening to me.
I
So,
think when it comes to like immigration
he's
problem,
listening.
yeah,
I think when we
Go ahead,
talk about
Jeremy.
immigration,
it's okay.
I'm totally fine with that.
I think when we look at immigration problem and all that, like he wants to blame the Latinos and all that, but
No.
absolutely Trump has said that.
No, I thought you meant me. I go,
Oh
no.
no, I'm saying him, but I don't think he's realizing what he's saying because most of those people that are coming to the United States are Asians. Like here, I'll pull up. I have the
Well, I don't
statue.
know that you can. I don't know that that's true at all.
I have
Hold on,
Pew
one sec.
Research. I have Pew
Yeah,
Research.
I don't think that's true.
Okay,
Trace,
I'll give it to you.
Oh,
okay,
well,
Trace, can I,
hold on.
Trace? No,
Oh, yep.
I want to introduce two people. Trace, can I get your age and who you voted for, please?
20. I did not vote this
Oh,
term or last term.
all right. Can I ask why?
I live in Texas.
Um,
It's fair.
so you're a liberal then, and you didn't think your vote would count, or
Yeah.
okay?
Well,
Um,
as a Texas lib, you should have just
wait,
continued.
hold on,
Sorry.
stop. Shadow, can I get your age and who you voted for, please?
Sure. 38, Florida. Trump.
All right, thank you. You guys can jump in wherever you can, wherever you fit in. That's fine. Thank you. Hi, Pick.
Hi. Dobby, I was gonna say, so the demographic I think you are speaking about is for asylum. Because I do believe that the Chinese actually are the largest um, group that seek asylum or refugee status.
Yeah, because of
I
That's
think,
that's what he
right?
said. That's what he was saying.
Oh, I thought I heard him say just
No, no. I'm just saying
Immigrants
like
in general. That's what I
no, no,
thought.
no,
I agree.
no. Like it. So on the Pew research, it literally breaks it down about the small shares. Like 27% of them are Latin American, which includes Mexico, including the Caribbean, Central America, and South America. Um, so I mean, it breaks them down percentages.
And what are the Chinese? Or what are the Asians?
Asians are so if you break it down, it's 28%. Latin America is 27%. Caribbeans are 10%. Central America is 9%. South America is 9%.
Oh, well, I think you add all those together if you're going to add all the Asians together.
It's. I mean, you got to break it down category by category, though.
Yeah, but you wasn't it?
You can't
Did
just
it
put. You
say
can't.
Asian? Did it say Asians or did it say
It just say
Chinese?
Asia.
Yeah, Asia's quite a big place, don't you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, but I
Yeah,
mean,
it includes more than one country, right?
right. But each
Yeah.
country is different as having a
Well,
strong.
yeah, as would be the same for Central America and South America too, right? But Central America is a whole lot of different countries too, and you're separating those while you're including all of Asia together. I would say the Latin American countries and the South American countries way outnumber the Chinese or the Asians.
Mm, agree to disagree.
There
I
is
mean,
no
Central.
agree to
I mean,
disagree. This is a factual statement.
So if Asia is 28%, and he says Central America was 9%, it's simply easy to say, well, how much is South America plus Central America? And
He,
then,
he's he said Mexico was 27%, right?
like,
Yeah, Latin America is 27%,
Latin
excluding.
America, and then Central America, you add another 9. That outdoes Asia altogether.
oh, okay. I missed the part where he said Mexico.
Well, yeah, Latin
Can
America, I guess. So that would include northern Central America. I don't fucking know.
So, can I ask a question? You guys are okay letting unvetted people cross and wait to go through the court system while they're staying with us?
I mean, we let unvetted people work for our federal government, so why not?
Yeah, and Shadow, if you have a problem with it, I'm not gonna make a judgment call on that because the law of the land is that. So that is what our laws specifically say that is what happens. So if you have an issue with that, like don't take it up with this TikTok panel. Like I think you should also take it up with like your local legislator. You
No,
can have
no,
Yeah,
CS
it's.
is right.
I
Also,
mean, it's.
take it up with the court. If you have an issue with due process, that's a whole other
I mean,
thing, right?
I'm
So,
happy that it's being handled now. So
So you don't
that's
care
not
about
gonna
the
be.
Constitution. So you don't care about the Constitution.
I
That's what.
care about the citizens of the
No.
U.S.
So
being
so
safe.
throw away. So okay, I'm gonna ask you this: would you rather throw away our Constitution to keep America safe?
Absolutely.
Well, you're ridiculous, sir.
well,
I
you would
mean,
love
hold on,
Clarence
hold on.
Thomas, I will say that.
I mean, to be fair, he before you asked him that question, he said, "I care about the American citizens." He didn't say American people. He didn't say, I care about citizens and those who are here legally. Like, no, he did say that he cared about American citizens.
Yeah,
So,
but when I asked him,
that was.
does he, would you rather throw away the Constitution to keep America safe? He said yes. That's what he said. So
But
throw everything
but
out.
my point is if he only cares about American citizens, then the answer to your question is going to be
You
yes,
Shadow,
because the
then
Constitution
I'll ask
covers
him
more
this.
than just
How much,
citizens.
Shadow? How much you care about American citizens?
No, no, no. Actually, I would like to interject in that question before that question, and even throw that question away because that's kind of ridiculous. I'll say this: you cannot, if you cared, because you say you care, and you've clearly already said that if it means throwing away the Constitution, and you're not the only one who would share that belief that getting rid of it, allowing a dictator to run this country, and to deport U.S. citizens keeps us safe. Um,
Wait, he didn't
then
say anything about deporting U.S. citizens.
No,
but
don't put words in my mouth. So
no,
I
no,
think.
I'm not putting words in
Hold
the
on.
mouth. Hold on,
You
I'm
are.
not
You just
finished.
said deport American citizens.
Yes, because that's what he voted for. He
No,
believes
he didn't vote for
the
that. You
current
didn't ask
policy is
him.
being
You didn't ask him
implemented.
why he voted.
You're
Uh,
going to assume I get that, but
All right, perfect, Shadow. Okay, let me ask you this, Shadow. How much you actually care about the American people?
no, because you have to throw away this Constitution to deport citizens. So he's for that.
Wait,
No,
because I
what
wanna
I'm
dive into
for
that
is
question.
what I'm for is them to follow a process like my family has and
I don't care about your
Where's
feelings,
parent
buddy.
is.
I don't care about your feelings, buddy.
Student
I don't.
asylums.
family?
Did I
He said his
mention
family.
feelings?
He
I
said
don't
his
have it.
family because his family had the luxury and privilege to come here, quote unquote, the right way. But Shadow, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you. I want to ask you a question. Do you have any evidence to back up that your fears of these undocumented people committing all these crimes or they're so unvetted?
Considering that family has come from these places, yes. We have, just to
Pull,
give you an
pull,
example,
the stats.
Mexico.
Pull the
No,
stats.
no,
Hold on,
not
Wait,
hold
your
on,
you
anecdote.
asked a
because I
question.
haven't been
Hold on,
able to
you
get a
asked a
word in.
question. You've got to let him answer.
He's not answering it though.
No, I'm not answering what you want to hear. I got you.
Ah, see.
Trump Trump has recently offered to Mexico, hey, we can take care of your cartel problem. No problem. It was denied.
What happened last time they did that?
Answer my question.
You are correct. He didn't
Yeah,
answer the
we're
question.
we're we're
That
skipping a
was
lot of.
yeah,
Fucking
that
huge
was
pivot.
ridiculous.
So you
I
want to
agree with
trust
you
a
that.
country that's that
I'm gonna
even
ask
Wait,
you
I
again.
want you.
swayed in the
Yeah, I
government?
want you to ask. Wait, ask the question again, Brian.
Okay, do you have any evidence to back up your fears that these people who you claim are unvetted are committing crimes?
Evidence? No. That's why you do a vetting process
Ah,
to rule
So
that out.
okay, so we don't need to acknowledge his original question then.
Right. So, which goes into
You're
if you
literally
care,
stating don't have to go through a vetting process. You're okay with taking the risk and putting others
Not
at
unvetted.
risk.
You think they're not unvetted.
and you're putting words in our mouth saying that we're for that when I think I've been the only one up here who has been hammering at away at that we need to. It's not about watered down asylum laws. It's not about anything other than a slowed down, a non-funded, inefficient processing of those vetting. So if your whole thing is about being vetted, then you should be A equals B. If you're for vetting, then you should be for ensuring funding the very process that gets those vetted the fastest. That's an A equals B situation. What is currently being done is you
Mm-hmm.
voted for a process and implementation where myself and or you, especially if you and your family came here, which means you'll be first before me on that plane being deported if Trump so feels like it, or Christy Noem, or the ICE agents working in our local areas feel like it. We already have evidence of multiple U.S. citizens, born American citizens, being deported from our country.
And
We,
without due process. And
yes, without due
and
process.
what I would say is if we can extradite a Haitian senator, and I watched the case in federal court, drag him to the states,
Then
you
we can
know,
drag our people back. And
drag him and make him go through a full trial, then anyone here deserves due process. I
exactly.
will never, I'll die on that hill. Like you
So
cannot, you you cannot go, oh no, but they're not really a citizen, and so no due process. We can just do whatever. No, I'm sorry. If we're able to extradite people and then charge them and go through a full 12-week trial, then you're not going to give no. Sorry, you can't have both.
Okay.
And
Then
that's
why
how
not
American
hold
law is
them?
supposed to work, right? We
Why not
give due
hold them
process to
until we
people.
do the process?
because
Well, we
that's not how the
do.
law. That's not how the law and the process
But
is currently written.
often we do hold people, while
They're known to be criminals.
awaiting.
That's true.
Yeah, right. If it's not, yeah. But we all the whole thing was we always would give. There was one case, and the question was because we always assumed if you're in American soil, you are owed due process, even if you're not legal. Now, if we're fighting a foreign battle or war, and there's like you're a prisoner of that becomes more complicated, and that's the question that's still open, but that's not what's happening here. Like, these are families. Again, many things can be true at once. It's not it's a nuanced conversation. Reasonable
I would
minds
say
can
it's not
disagree.
so
CB,
nuanced.
so I don't think that question is open though. I don't think we're being invaded, and I don't think that question is like.
There's
No, but I
no
didn't say we were
formal
being
declaration.
invaded. I never said that.
Well, you're talking about the Alien Enemies Act, right?
I was never mentioned that act at all. I think that no, I
Well,
think that Trump is misapplying that act completely. No, you're wrong. You're reading into something that is not true. That's not
okay,
my belief.
then what were you saying about us
What I
being?
was saying is we owe even people that are not legally here due process every time. That's
Mm.
Yes,
does it
Yeah,
are you
he's
against that?
he's agreeing
Are
with
you
our point.
I'm agreeing with you and you're so angry you're not
No, no,
able
no,
to
no,
see
no,
it.
CB, no, CB. What you're saying though is you caveat things. So you can say
No.
that, and then you can say period, right? But otherwise, you caveat it with unless we're
No,
doing, or
it's
unless
because I'm
we're
a little
under.
academic. So I mentioned a case in which if you're
No.
fighting a foreign war in a foreign territory and you're in a
Mhm.
in a military prison, maybe due process has some limits. The court has said as much, right? It might be different, but that doesn't apply here, so I shouldn't have mentioned it. No,
All
I'm
right, thank you for walking that
yeah.
back. Thank you. Okay.
I'm not saying that that should apply
Okay.
here. I'm just
Thank
saying
you
it
for
was
being wicked academic. I appreciate you.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
if
Shadow,
TD
go on.
if TDA is working with the Venezuelan government, and if they are sending people over here for specific reasons, could that not be considered a foreign invasion by a foreign government?
Yes. I would say if you could prove that, really, then sure. But
Okay, that's the claim that was made by
And
Donald Trump.
it
yeah,
and
wow.
well, that's a claim made by Donald Trump.
A
And
He
dangerous,
doesn't provide, and he
yes.
doesn't provide any evidence for that.
Uh, I don't know that he has to, does he?
yes,
Yes.
That,
Wait,
but
wait, in order to declare something that's specifically stated in the law, I mean, he's upholding the law. Why would he have to
No,
prove
so
that he's
with something
upholding the
like
law?
that, the executive has unbridled authority, especially with not unbridled, but especially with Congress behind him. He has way more than he, way more power than he should, unfortunately. And the court will
Yeah, to
dodge
protect the
those kind of
country.
yeah,
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 to
if you want
protect
a
the
Supreme
country.
Court decision about that, good luck because before we haven't had since World War II a real war, but we have the War Powers Act which says the president can send troops for an emergency for 40 days. Well, Vietnam wasn't 40 days, neither was the war in Korea, but the court dodged the question and did not want to take the case because they were very worried they'd lose their legitimacy. And if Congress and the president say, well, I don't care about your little piece of paper, we're going to do it. The voters like it, and it's a problem. It's all that is an issue that is always going to be a problem, and it's not good. I mean, I think it's a terrible thing. That's someone that should be not voted for or impeached if they're going to use that kind of unilateral authority. But
Stop being
that's
such a
but
liberal.
but it's
I
strange
know
that
I sound like one now, don't I?
but it's strange that Trump is making the accusation that the Mexican government is doing that when he has already acknowledged or admitted that he's working with the Mexican president.
No, that's
So,
Venezuela.
oh, never mind.
No,
TDA is
But
from Venezuela.
so
it's anytime someone mentions national security or safety or whatever, like you get away with too much. The president has abused since I don't know before even Reagan. I mean, the use of executive authority because of national security it's been abused by every president on both sides. George Bush Senior, Junior, Clinton, Reagan, but Trump certainly, Obama
The
absolutely,
main
all of
tenets,
them.
yeah, the main tenet of the executive branch is to ensure that the American people are safe, though. So when it does come to things like invasion or
But
war powers or something like that, then they are going to have the utmost
for
leeway
for a
in what they
real
do.
emergency, yeah. But the
Well,
issue is
yeah,
it's a
but who
little like
gets to decide whether they're real? And if that
the
decision is going to be
president,
made, shouldn't it?
unfortunately.
Yeah, well, and if the decision is going to be made outside the presidency, shouldn't it wait until after the emergency is over?
I thought Congress has to,
well,
I thought,
no, it should not wait
well,
till after.
well. Think about Rome, right? Where Rome had
Why?
a
Then
senate
we
and they
might
had a
just get invaded and
democracy.
they might take over the whole country if we wait
That's a
Well,
what
if we
about? That's
do
a
it.
and
war.
and that's what they'll say. But Rome, right? Rome didn't have Caesars normally, they could appoint a Caesar in a time of war. Name me one Caesar that has given up that authority. They always found another emergency. They were always able to find another crisis, and they were very reticent to get rid of their authority. But my biggest fear in America is the use of security or safety or to basically boost executive power, and we've seen it happen over and over again. It's a nightmare, and this is not like a political opinion almost. It's just both sides have done it,
It's
right?
more of a constitutional.
Yeah, and we it's the one thing in the impeachment powers, a good luck now. I mean, you can't. It's bad, but I guess
Yeah,
that's my point. Yeah,
yeah, it's gotten bad,
Well,
but the
the
thing,
libs have already tried it twice, and they're going to look like idiots if they try
they
it
made
again.
a horrible political decision by watering down that. Yeah, that was awful, awful choice politically, but
well, that's why they haven't
the
done it
moral
yet.
high ground, maybe it was worth it.
They're recruiting Republicans to do it, and they're sitting back and letting we're all sitting back at this point, at least on the liberal side, and effectively watching, knowing we're going to be in pain, so we're accepting all the pain. It's just how much more pain will Republicans accept before they do something about Trump? That's kind of where we're at. Effectively, that's the overarching attitude of the liberals right now. I can tell you
No,
that.
no, and I've
You keep
told my
believing that, but
no, I've told my family members, like, oh yeah, you're very happy with all the executive. I don't like executive orders because they are supposed to be reserved for. First of all, if you read Article 2, it doesn't say really much about what the president can do, but we know the president acting in concert with Congress is at his highest amount of power. But the horrible thing about executive orders that people don't realize is, especially now, and as someone that's rather conservative, pass a goddamn bill. Stop doing it through executive order because the next president can immediately reverse all of them.
Well,
It
then
doesn't
tell the
last.
Dems to tell the
It
Yeah.
Dems
doesn't
to step in
last.
line.
And
The
It's a
bear,
terrible
tell the
strategy.
Dems, yeah, tell the Dems to step in line though, because for Christ's sake, we voted Donald Trump in,
No,
so that he's the
Trump
one who's in
Trump
charge right
but
now.
Trump has a Congress that could
It was
pass
a
bill.
mandate. It was the mandate. He got the
But
most
Trump
votes
It
ever in
is a
history.
mandate.
no, but wait, but Trump has Congress on his side. Congress could pass a bill, and passing a bill or amending a bill is way more
Yeah,
difficult
but
than an executive order. The
yeah,
next
but
president,
we don't want to, yeah, we don't want to give the same power to the next guy though.
But
But
most of
what
the
you,
no, but
executive
no, but
orders
he's
we
have
can
created
been
veto
precedent
our
now.
way out of that.
most
He's
of
So,
cre-
the
but also, I want to highlight the fact that Trump was highly critical of like all of his former opponents in writing executive orders. He said it was the way to a cheap presidency. He said it was the way that a weak man makes power. And he's basically criticizing himself. So
yeah,
it's very
and he
interesting.
was critical of the pardon power, and he's abused that too. I don't listen. Everyone should be skeptical, no matter what side you fall on, of your leader. Like America, really, the founders, they wanted the people to be like holding their leaders under a microscope. I don't know why there's so many sycophants that are just like, well, that seems fine. No, like you could vote for someone and be like, I made a mistake, or oh God, he's pissing me off. Yeah, there's nothing wrong or shameful about saying that. I do not agree with the overuse of executive authority. To use an executive order to talk about paper straws or whatever, like that is it. I feel like I'm watching Veep when
a
I
lot of
think of
those
that.
executive orders have been like questioned by a lot of the federal circuit courts. Like it's not like they're sticking and
Yeah,
just flexing his power. I don't think if he knew like he wanted to pass a bill, he would send it through Congress. I think he has sent some bills through Congress, which probably won't pass because he would need the overwhelming majority of Republicans and some of the Democrats, which I just don't see happening.
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
flexing his power.
I disagree.
I
He
mean,
could
well,
easily pass a bill right now, but
well, what happened with what happened to that Canada tariff? You see how Republicans respond to that?
well, some bills are just bad bills.
I mean,
Well, I
most
At
of
mean,
the end of the
most of
day,
his what do you mean? Most of his bills are bad. Most of his EOs are bad.
uh, yeah. Well, again, not a fan of executive orders. I wasn't a fan with it with Obama or Bush or him. I mean,
But the
that's
difference
my
is
opinion.
most Republicans, like a traditional small government Republican, would be against like the federal government reaching over Like they would prefer a small government, a limited
true
government where the federal government doesn't have overreach to just
What's
put
smaller?
out.
What's smaller
a
than
true
one man?
conservative would be horrified
What's
by it.
smaller than one man?
Yeah, one man that's determining the policy of an entire country. A small
Yeah,
government.
that's the smallest government you can possibly get.
That's actually the federal
That's a
government
horrible argument. What are you
overreaching their
talking
power.
about?
This would have Thomas Jefferson rolling in his grave.
Small
Yeah,
government doesn't mean the amount of
you're spinning
human
our
beings
founders right now.
involved. That's not what this.
Now look at the president. The president that's
You know
been set.
what they say. You know, if you want efficiency, get a dictatorship. Like it. That's not how
Right?
our
At this
government
point,
works.
Well, we can still have elections. There's no reason not to have elections. We've
oh
got
yeah,
to do
we'll
nothing.
be like we'll be
We've
like
got to
fucking
do.
Russia.
We've got to do nothing Congress. So we got to start getting some things done because this Congress won't do anything. It hasn't done anything for quite a long time. Dems won't
Mhm.
work with Republicans. It's ridiculous.
And
So,
here's
yeah,
Yeah,
the
that's
is
I
that
it.
just want to
Doesn't
right
let you
matter.
now.
know. I just want to let y'all know. I appreciate being up here for a bit. I've got to go. I got a DV call to handle. But I appreciate being here, and it was fun.
Are you a
Gotta
cop?
get.
Yes, I am a former cop, now private contractor that works with state police.
Ooh.
Arrest his ass. Arrest him.
Ooh.
He's
But
a traitor to our
it's fun.
country.
Have a good
Hey, good
evening,
luck.
sir.
Yeah,
Thank you for
good
Yeah,
luck.
guys.
I mean, Mojo, if you want to fucking dictate our country, get the hell out of the United States.
I don't want a dictator. I want to be able to
Well,
vote in our
Seems
leaders,
like
but
you
I want
want
a
one
smaller
man.
well,
government, and the
You want
smallest
one
government
man.
we can get
You
is
want
one
one
man.
man.
One
no,
man?
that's
Wait, Mojo, you're in support of the oversight of Donald Trump? I
I'm
thought
in
that
support
was.
of an executive branch making decisions
I
that
don't think
Congress
small
can't
government
fucking do.
ever meant
Fucking
one
I am
crazy.
person
hello,
deciding things.
hello,
No, small
hello,
government
hello,
when states
hello.
were
What
like.
is
Okay.
going on here? Oh my gosh, I can't talk. I'm for the government getting things done. And if Congress is doing absolutely nothing, then yes, the executive branch has to take over and get things done.
Sometimes, yes. If it is
No.
actually if it's crucial and important, but there are some
Okay, what's
executive
crucial in
orders that are.
Puerto? Okay, what's crucial in Puerto right now?
I've got a
Well, you
question
don't
for you,
get to decide because you're not in
Why
power.
not?
And Mojo, what do
No, my
you.
money's getting my money's going to that. I need
Doesn't
to
matter.
know.
Then you
I
should
need
get
to
more
know.
people to
Well, I'm
vote
a
for your
fucking.
guy.
Well,
You
then
should
I'm
get
gonna
more
start
people to vote for your
writing.
person.
I think that's a slippery slope, Mojo. And if you believe
That's
that
a fallacy, sir. A slippery slope is a fallacy.
yeah,
Okay.
Not okay.
You
Wait.
know, guys, if
Not
you
making
look
a
at smart
fallacious
Show me a
argument. You
country that
said
does that. Show me a country that was able to be successful. That have that type of power.
Well, now there's so much hate in Congress. Like it now it's just if one guy does this, we're gonna stop him. The other guy does this, we're gonna stop him. See all the things that they're blocking Trump on. If Dems get back in power, then the Republicans are gonna repeat and do the same damn thing. So now this has just become a shit show on both sides.
that's not
There's no
true.
working together.
No, it's
Biden
not.
passed.
Whoa.
Wait. Biden passed bills through Congress. Why do we act like Congress are these like incapable like infants? These are Harvard graduates. These are capable people. These people just cannot agree because they're being paid by two sides of the same like donor class. Don't
I
act like they're.
agree.
You think
Agreed.
that graduating from Harvard makes you capable of doing anything
I'm not.
short of
I'm just
crewing?
saying they're not incapable. They're not like not qualified to do their jobs. Like I would agree the people that are in office right now, for the most part, are qualified. It's not like we have people that didn't graduate high school up there. These are people that are well versed in how our republic works.
Well, yeah, and
So
that's why
I
they're
thought
making so
also
much
to
money
say
off of it.
Congress did
Of
nothing
All
was
those
course,
sort of
criminals making money
silly.
off of it.
Congress
making
has
money, making
Congress
money off of.
has
does the
done
panel
stuff. It's
does the
silly
panel
to say
mind
they
if I
haven't.
ask everyone a question? So I always hear dictator, fascist, and things like this, right? And I'm MAGA, right? But I always hear this. And whoever was talking earlier about for our safety, I absolutely agree. So I've got another question after this. But um, as a fascist dictator, when we had the big C in the pandemic, you know,
What?
would a fascist dictator, when we
Dixie.
had the pandemic, would a
Um.
fascist dictator not give the power back to the states? I mean, was that not exactly what Trump did?
Well, wait. Why are you saying that?
Confusingly?
Wait a minute. All right.
Uh,
Couple things on that. Um, I don't. If Mojo, you can shoot me down on this if you want, but I would like to play. I have like the audio up of Trump and talking about executive orders and how he feels about executive orders before he took office. So I think it's relevant to hear that, but it's up to you.
How long is it?
It's like it's probably about 45 seconds. It's
Oh,
not
that's
super
fine.
long.
I don't mind. I don't mind listening to it. Play it.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you guys. Let me know if you guys
But
can
no,
hear
but
it.
if anybody wants to answer my question,
Yeah, and
to
I
that
got you
too,
after.
all yours.
Yeah, I got you after approach. I got you. I heard that, and
Yeah.
for sure. Well, 1 second. Here's this.
She's got so little
Can you guys
respect
hear it?
for the Republican leaders that he just
Yeah.
goes.
Rewind it now.
Little respect for the Republican leaders that he just goes along and signs executive orders for everything. No, it's all executive orders because that's easy to do. I'll tell you the one good thing about an executive order is that the new president come and with just a signature, they're all done. Okay, that's good. Wouldn't it be nice if they could actually get Congress together and do it the old-fashioned way where people work and they this and they cajole together and they get along or they don't get along and they come up with something.
Can't hear that, CS.
Can you hear it or no?
I can't hear that. No, as soon as it switched over, I couldn't hear.
That second part sounded like he wants Congress to work together.
I heard him literally saying exactly my point, which is
Yeah,
next president, all of it's gone.
Yeah, and he was saying a week like to sum it up, like basically by the end of it, there's and it's 143 to 143 executive orders that him and Obama signed. So I agree, like there could be issues either way, but what he was basically saying, what Trump was saying, was that it takes a weak president to not pass things through Congress. To come out and say things like that and then to do things like this, it just is so crazy to me.
Can I see to add to that? One of the things
side's
that
not willing to
They
work
get
with him.
critical about it.
hold on, can I
Trump
add to that?
supporter give his
Trump was
perspective?
he was very critical of Hillary and her hiding from like 33,000 emails, and he called her a crook and like a thief of the American people. Yet, like his first few weeks in office, he launched his own meme coin and he pulled $3 billion from the American people. And then after that, he manipulated the stock market 2 times. He quoted that he was going to put tariffs, a blanket tariff, and then he said, we're going to officially put a pause on the tariffs for 90 days, which saw the most growth in the stock market in like all of history. It grew 9%.
This is a totally different subject, man. You're just
that's kind of all over the place. But on the subject,
okay, my point is he's a
you're
liar.
gish galloping. We were talking about something specific.
And look, I'm a
subject.
hardcore Trump supporter, and I will admit right now that the crypto thing, although not illegal, and his sons own the company, is in bad form. I'm 100% behind anybody who wants to call Trump out on that. I'm actually disappointed as a Trump supporter.
He's a crook.
Well, hold on. That, although not illegal, but let's stay on the subject at hand, and you guys can grill me on that all you want. Interesting enough that when Obama was asked why he was signing so many executive orders, he told the media at the time that Clinton actually signed more than him, and this was in his first presidency. And at that time, that was actually a lie. He was at 33% more than Clinton. And if you guys ever have dug into Obama's executive orders, I'm not sure if anybody here has. I've spent quite a bit of time, and I'm starting to see him
Trump just broke his record. That's what that video was. That's what that video was saying.
Well, you also have to look into the fact that Trump signed a lot of executive.
Why are we talking about Obama? Why aren't we focusing on this?
Well, because there's a very important thing here, and I'll explain why. So yes, Trump signed a bunch of executive orders, a lot of them having to do with the border. And am I wrong that day one in office, Biden undid those executive orders? Anybody?
Wait, are you saying who signed the most executive orders?
Well,
he's talking about Trump undoing Obama's executive orders. So which ones?
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said.
Then clarify it, please. I'm sorry, maybe I missed.
Yeah, no, I said that Trump signed a lot of executive orders revolving around the border, but day one in office, Biden undid all those executive orders. So when Trump got back in office, obviously a lot of those were redoing those executive orders.
catch and release?
There's a bunch of them. Yeah, I think there was like 27 of them in relation to the border. I could be wrong about that number, but somewhere
Yeah,
upwards around.
And
the
that's why
border
the
was.
president's not supposed to legislate, just like the court. And unfortunately, they
Well,
do.
I don't know. Yes, I do agree in some ways, but it was also Madison who quoted in the Federalist Papers that if we created too many laws, that there would be no reason to have the executive branch, and that the judicial branch would basically be the ruler of the land.
Oh yes, Thomas
Um,
Jefferson, who's Madison's bestie, was like, instead of a King George, we'll have a King Marshall, right? Who wrote Marbury versus Madison. But
yeah.
he was dead wrong, and I love Jefferson for many reasons, but he's also
Well,
very fallible for
I
very
mean,
many reasons.
well, wait a
Slavery
second. Oh,
one,
is that CB?
but
Oh,
yeah.
whatever. Well, then, would you not agree that we've had 200 years of Supreme Court opinion perverting the true meaning of the Constitution in so many ways?
So
Uh,
I'll tell you this. So weirdly enough, people don't realize like the court, like constitutional review, right, was or judicial review even wasn't a thing until Marbury versus Madison. And then that was when everyone's like, oh no, now we'll have like the court's going to be the controller. Not really at all. And you know the reason? Because the court doesn't have any kind of support. They don't have in like an army. They have nothing to, they have a piece of paper that they write and they hope to God that the branches take it seriously. And there have been times, constitutional crises, where it's been real close. If you know, there like Andrew Jackson, right, with his Senate and Congress, were very close to committing a constitutional crisis. In fact, most people probably would say he did do that, where he said, "I'm not going to listen. I don't care. You know, subpoena me. Good luck. You know, what are you going to do? All these old men in robes with your little piece of
sure.
paper. Congratulations."
Yeah.
So, and the War Powers Act, like all completely violated, and
Absolutely.
the court
The
will just not grant cert. They'll just refuse to deal with it, and
the
because
Patriot
they
Act.
have no exactly they
We
have
can go on for
no
days. The Smith-Munns Act, the revisions,
forever,
like
because they're so they that is their check, is that they don't have any kind of influencer power. Like they don't have an army, they don't have like any way to enforce their decree. Like they hope to God that people take it
well,
seriously.
technically what
uh
they talked about in the Federalist
Dobby,
Papers
I'll bring you right back.
is it was
But
either up to the people or the states to keep those other branches in check, right? I mean, they gave us the Second
in the
Amendment for a
beginning.
reason.
Well,
You could say that.
remember, all of those amendments, including the second, only applied to the federal government until the 14th Amendment, until
Well,
after
hold
slavery, where
on.
we realized, uh oh, you know,
No, no. In the
if
Federalist Papers, when it talks about like our pew pew rights and so on, I think they're very clear because they spent 2 years on that one,
it
putting it
only
together.
applied to the federal government. So there were states back then that could completely ban pew pews, and it was completely fine.
Absolutely, absolutely not. They actually go over this
You
in the
are one
Federalist Papers.
hundred percent wrong, though. No, when they
No, okay. So
finally,
what was the reason for the Second Amendment?
no,
What was the
the
reason they said?
the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment, applied to the federal government only. The
No,
states could
they actually
just
talk
wait.
about this.
So just wait. So the only time, finally, the only time that those constitutional rights applied to states was through the 14th Amendment due process clause. You can I, I, listen. I study constitutional law. Like you can look this up
Absolutely, and
right
I'm going
now
to
if you
challenge
want
you on
to,
this.
and you're wrong.
Absolutely, I will challenge you on
You're
this.
you're wrong. It
So,
never applied
so,
to a state.
so in law, words are important, correct? Every comma, all that stuff's important, right?
Right. Yeah.
All
Especially with
right.
the
So,
Second
so,
Amendment.
and then we have law dictionaries to help us understand certain laws, and a lot of times they refer to even the Latin meaning of certain words, right?
Sometimes.
Well, our founders were very specific and careful about the way they worded this, and obviously the shall not be infringed is important, but they specifically used the word arms. Okay,
Right.
and they did this.
Agreed.
They did this, meaning armament, meaning, and if you go to the Latin meaning, which means weapon of war, right? Our founders knew that they didn't want the government to have better weapons than us.
So you say the
Okay,
government. What government are you talking about?
the creation
The
of what
federal
we
government
created.
is what
We
you're talking
created
about.
this with rules, and even in
What?
the Federalist Papers, when it talks about the government, and every it required every man
Right.
to acquire a weapon, it actually says in there that but not government employees, not the federal
No,
government.
I'm agreeing with you, but that only applied to the federal government until the 14th Amendment, because the Constitution was a limiting document that applied to the federal government. It's the
Shall
same.
not
It's
be
the same
infringed,
reason.
I think, is pretty clear.
So the Constitution only applied to the federal government until the 14th Amendment. It did not apply to the states. The states, the 10th Amendment, right?
Okay.
The
So
rest,
what did
the
they
rest of these
say?
rights shall. The 10th Amendment specifically says, and the rest of these shall be left to the states to decide.
Yeah, this is why
The
we have the
spheres of
Federalist Papers.
no, this is why we have the 14th Amendment, because what we realized was, oh no, what if 98% of Mississippi doesn't believe certain races should have any rights? Because we used to trust that the voters would decide, fine. Well, what if
Yeah, but you're
98% of Mississippi
absolutely.
decides wrong?
This is
So
why we're not a democracy.
what I'm
Absolutely, and I
saying is
completely
there
get
were,
that.
but if you look back, there were states that completely contradicted the Bill of Rights in
Leaving
many
what
ways.
they said in the Federalist Papers. You're leaving it out. Why? Why are you
No,
doing it, CD?
because
What was the
the
reason in the
Federalist
Federalist Papers
Papers
that we
were
were supposed to
essays
have
written by.
arms? What was the reason? Say it for everybody, for the
I am
class.
agreeing with you, but
Oh,
you're not listening.
oh, he's
It's the
agreeing,
issue.
everyone. It doesn't
So,
sound like
the
you're
fe-
agreeing at all.
do you know what is a seminal case that was decided about the Second Amendment? It was the Heller decision. When was it written? 2011 by Scalia. The
It was
first time.
2008, I think, right?
I think it was later than that. I think it was 2010 or 2011.
Yeah,
But
but
it doesn't
wasn't it
matter. The point is
wasn't
that
it Scalia that talked about that the
It
Supreme
was
Court
2008. Damn it, I was right.
you were
is
right.
the
Good for you. That's
supreme
good.
law of the land? But no, that's not true.
You have to.
Hold on, Madison argued that the Supreme Court justices can be just as corrupted as any man, and he talks about this in the Federalist Papers. So the Constitution itself is the Supreme Court of the land, and it was
So
that damn statement that has perverted the Constitution ever since.
So first of all, the Federalist Papers, as wise as they are, and Madison wrote a bunch, are
Yeah.
not law, right? Those were musings and essays written by our founders to try to
Constitution
come
is.
together. I'm not, just let me finish. I'm not saying they're not important, because if you read case law, they oftentimes do consult the Federalist Papers. Scalia consulted the
Capitalism.
Federalist Papers during the Heller decision. Even so, I'm not saying they're not important, but they're not law, right? So the Constitution is a limiting document that applies to the federal government. The only time it ever applied to the states, meaning that, for instance, if I'm a federal employee versus a state employee back then, states can do what they want. We kind of let the states run, because the whole idea was we had a king, right? We
Wait,
came to
what is the
America.
purpose of this argument?
Just
Why are we
I
having
don't
this
know, but
discussion?
someone argued
Wait,
that
so okay, fine, then approach. Why are we having this discussion
Well,
about
someone
the
brought up.
meaning of the Second
to
Someone
Amendment?
brought up.
clarify.
Wait, stop,
Doing,
CB. Stop. Approach, go
somebody
ahead.
brought up doing. Well, first we started to talk about Trump and fascism and executive orders and someone had mentioned earlier about the federal government doing things, taking away our constitutional rights for our safety, air quotes, and we were warned about this not only by our founders but by people like Alexis de Tocqueville, who came here to visit us and study our judicial. Like we've
Yeah, but that guy was French, right? Don't they suck?
Well, you know what? He came here to study the judicial. The man was at awe of the way we were running things, and he wrote long memoirs about it. And they're long and they're tedious, but they're a good read if you get past some stuff. All I'm saying is that you guys are sitting here saying Trump is unconstitutional, but so far it seems like most of the stuff he's going against the law. And if we were to count, like if we were to do a tit for tat and see all of the cases brought against Biden, and I think even Obama, that versus how much they won and lost, Trump has got a better record of winning these cases.
So
Absolutely.
a couple questions. Do you give the same weight to the Anti-Federalist Papers as you do the Federalist Papers? Because those were also written by some of the framers during the time
Absolutely.
that okay, all right.
Yeah,
But
in the
can you
end,
acknowledge CB's point that those are not law? They are like they are contemporary to the time in the context of that time, musings about how the laws were being like created and
well,
what was being
no,
considered.
not that part I can't agree with because what I have noticed is that unlike us Americans these days, our founders had a really good sense of history and governments that were before them.
Up to that
It,
point
Yeah,
in
it,
time.
wait,
Up
wait,
to
well,
that
wait.
hold
point
on.
in time.
Well, hold
Wait,
on.
Up
So
to
as
that
can
point
much
in
as
time, though.
give me 10 seconds. So
go
I
ahead.
find that very, especially from a conservative, I find that very ironic because any conservative that knows the history of our country knows that the Constitution and Bill of Rights were only meant for the federal government because we were worried about centralized power. The states were left to do whatever they wanted until the 14th Amendment was
What does
passed.
it say
I'm
about states?
shocked that you don't know. Like, I
What
don't
does it
under,
say
like,
about states and laws? No state shall what?
what?
Say about states and making laws, and when it comes in comparison to the Constitution.
Nothing until the
Where?
14th.
And until the
It's
14th Amendment, nothing. What are you talking about?
well, no, it talks about no state shall make a law going against the Constitution, not those exact words.
He's talking about the
But
supremacy
You
clause.
might be actually quoting the 14th Amendment, which would prove.
Yeah.
Wait, I just wanted
Well,
to add real quick. You kind of misspoke. Trump versus Obama. Obama won more court cases than Trump.
Oh, by the
but
way,
but
yeah, the
no, hold
14th
on.
Amendment, no state shall
I
deprive
also
any
have
Hold
person
some
of
on, but
points
life,
I'm
to
talking
liberty, or
about
that.
the amount of
property.
cases brought in comparison.
They're
So yeah.
pretty similar in terms of
Well, what
number.
are the numbers for the class? Just so we know. And I
Okay.
said maybe
I mean, you
Obama
made the
was my.
claim, so
No,
technically
I
you should be
said
the one
definitely
proving it.
Biden, but I said maybe even Obama were my exact words. But go ahead. I want to hear the numbers since you have them there.
Okay, so Obama administration was involved in 66 Supreme Court cases, winning 28, losing 20, and 44 were unanimous. So he had a win rate of 47%, and Trump had a an administrative win rate of 23%. It doesn't say how many Trump is facing because he's still currently in office,
About
but
100, I think, right now, but it's somewhere around there.
it's what?
I think it's around 100. I could be wrong. I don't quote. You can don't quote me. I just that's what I heard recently. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
just like an open number though because he's still in office. So it
Sure,
used both of
absolutely, I get that.
Obama's. Okay, so yeah.
I mean, I'm just talking about the amount of cases brought by Trump versus, and I don't know about Obama. I said maybe not, but I know that that's true in the case of Biden.
And I think it's kind of
You
like pretty wrong to compare Obama to Trump in that regard because Obama was pretty bipartisan. He had a lot of support from Republicans on some of the legislation he got through, whereas Trump is simultaneously doing the opposite, going
All
through.
right.
Well,
Hold
yeah.
on,
So that
hold on.
means that there's all kinds of liberals out there going after him for no fucking reason at all.
But
So
but
they've got
but even
That's
lawyers set up
CB.
all over the country to make sure that they're filing lawsuits at every action he takes.
that's great.
Well, I'm going to
I
ask you
agree.
guys.
I
I'm going
agree.
to ask you guys. I'm going to ask CB. CB, what do you think about that Circuit One judge showing up at midnight on a Saturday
Oh
while the
my
federal
god.
judge was on leave? I'm just asking.
I don't know that about that enough to even comment. I'll be honest.
I totally. We went over this with you for like an hour on a live. How do you not know enough
I
about
know.
this? You read it
I
yourself.
I don't know. I mean,
I think you just don't want to comment, and I find that a cop out, to be honest with you, because we
no.
spent quite a bit of
I
time
mean,
on
it's
this.
certainly suspect,
Inform me.
Okay, real quick,
what do you
guys.
think?
Hold
What
on.
do you? Okay, go
Real,
ahead.
real quick. I
but
just
like,
want to
I'm not.
introduce Kate. Kate's been up here for quite a bit, and I have
Yeah,
not gotten a
DB
chance to
is this the
introduce
wedding
her.
that you officiated? Was it Kate's?
Oh my god!
I'm
I'm
sorry.
just kidding.
I. Why is it always my profile picture that gets harassed?
Because you it
You
bothers you, so
are.
I have to keep thinking of
Yeah,
it.
fair enough. Fair enough.
I like the new profile
You
picture.
had the most lawyer
I,
picture ever before CB.
I,
To
I
be fair.
I don't know why people. Yeah, I know.
You're like,
hi,
I don't know why. Actually, yes, I do know.
hi,
Yeah,
Kate.
I get
Hi,
it.
Kate. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm trying to write a brief right now.
Oh boy, how
Yeah.
fun.
So
So
Well, that shouldn't take
Kate
too
is
long.
my
It's
other.
brief, right?
Yeah, haha. I see what you did. Shut up, Pa. So Kate is my other lawyer friend. I'm slowly building a panel of lawyers.
Is this age, state, location?
Yeah, oh yeah, sure, go for it.
Almost 30, Pittsburgh, PA, and Harris, of
Whoop
course.
whoop. Whoop whoop.
Whoop, whoop.
All right,
What
so
kind
are
of
you
law are you
defense or
guys doing?
prosecution?
Wait, what kind of? Yeah, I was gonna. Okay, just asking.
I do financial service litigation, so my main practice is representing banks. And, I specialize in financial fraud cases, so like Ponzi schemes.
You work
CB
in
is
the public sector?
So I do commercial litigation. I don't do consumer finance or anything like that. But
but you have worked on some federal stuff, which gives
oh
you
oh
a
yeah,
pretty.
I've done some very interesting ones.
He's had
But
his hand on some block orders in his day too on his desk, which I. So
yeah,
that's
I've had some interesting yeah cases, and I work for a federal judge, which so I've seen not like the big fun constitutional cases, but once in a while, and even a district judge, you see some stuff that's fun.
so
Most of it's
recently.
really not fun,
So
which
my
is what
my
I will say.
question to you, bouncing off that CB, like, would you say it's abnormal for district judges or even the Supreme Court to like wind up putting some sort of like urgent ruling out at a weird hour of the night? I know the Supreme Court put one
Yeah,
out
I
at
was
like
hoping no
midnight
one would
pretty
ask me
recently.
this. Always is the question of a district judge issues a emergency injunction or
Wasn't
a
there
restraining
circuit court?
order,
But
and
like
and
didn't the
extraterritorially, I don't know the answer to that
It was
okay,
a
because
circuit
but
one,
didn't the
right?
Supreme Court recently, I can't remember whether it was the JGG or
yeah, they,
the,
they basically said it was valid.
There's
but
two
no, they
cases.
issued that ruling at like 1 in the morning. Also, the
There's
Supreme
Yeah,
Court. Like, are we holding the Supreme Court to the same standard of suspicion as a district judge
no,
approach?
It
no,
was
and
a
I
circuit
I
one judge for one, I believe. I could be. That's to my
What
memory.
is
And then
Circuit One? I don't.
But
There's no. You mean First Circuit?
the First Circuit.
yeah, First Circuit. That's rather. Yeah, sorry, that's right. I'm
Do
not
you
a
have a
lawyer,
case
but
name or something that we could look at?
are you talking about the Boasberg
yes.
case?
I am not aware of this, so I'm not gonna opine because I don't know.
Okay.
But I know there's always been a interesting debate between like legal scholars about whether a district judge can have a national
Nationwide
injunction.
injunction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it looks like the answer is most likely yes, but
Both
it's
parties have
tough
used
to
them.
tell. I mean,
Although, if you look at what's going
yes.
on now, you see a lot more, a shit ton actually being brought. I mean, the judicial branch is, like I said, Trump's been winning a lot of these cases, not all of them. So, in regards to the Treasury, there was two data cases. One
He
that,
has
that was upheld.
lost a lot though too, which is interesting.
There's a lot brought in. I mean, he's won quite a
Yeah,
bit
that's
actually. So,
There's a big difference
yeah.
though in
So, do
in
you think?
the.
Yeah, go ahead, Kate. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just gonna say there's a huge difference in winning on the merits and winning on a preliminary injunction or like overturning a preliminary injunction. Those are two very different things. So,
I'm sure.
yeah, the win rate is still very low for Trump this term. I'll just say, but it's a very different thing than winning on the merits of if you're actually able to
and
do
he's
something.
had quite a few 9-0s, which is that's pretty with a pretty conservative court. That's not really
Well,
what you
they've
want,
all. This is also the most like, as far as the justices, they've had more cross decisions than ever before, right? Am I wrong about this?
What?
I mean,
Crossed.
yeah, like as far as like agreeing or in they seem to be working together more than on a political side more than ever in regards to
The
this.
court is more often like that than people realize. I don't like. I truly believe that they are more. They're supposed to be an apolitical branch, but I think they're more apolitical than people really think. Like Gorsuch wrote the Civil Rights Day like case. Like he was the one that delivered the opinion. He said it was gender discrimination.
I
Gorsuch,
think
right?
that I think the
Tenth
Supreme
Circuit.
Court.
Very
can get it wrong
conservative.
too. I mean, if we notice like they allowed things like what am I looking for the word? Money in politics in a sense. Super PAC.
Citizens United.
Citizens United. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was. I mean, clearly there was harm, and they at the time they said no, there's no harm. But today we can all agree that there's harm. You know.
Well, I think one thing with that is there was already dark money. There was already lobbying and politics going on under the table. They just created it to where like corporations could be viewed as an individual, which now nonprofits, 503(c)s, or yeah, whatever, like a whole bunch of corporations could donate to campaigns publicly and endorse them, whereas before they just did it under the table.
No,
I don't.
and that's exactly read that case. It's you would never
But
have known that that case would have caused
well, isn't that case about a
the
documentary being released?
about Hillary Clinton, and so it
Yeah.
had it was
It
if
really
you
wasn't
read the
about
narrow
money. It
facts
wasn't
and you
about
not at
corporations.
all.
It was about somebody making a documentary
The
and
fact that that
releasing it too
case has
close
been
to an election.
used in
Yeah,
the
it's
way
like
that
the
it
cop
has,
out. It's like the
it's
cop out
weird.
to say all elections are controlled.
You
Well,
know, I'm
don't
I'm not going to get into that, but I do have another question if you guys don't mind. It's really a two-part
Wait,
question.
but
Maybe it's go
before we move
ahead.
on, could I bring us back to um the winning, the idea of the winning? Do you what source are you getting that idea from? That kind of, like high win percentage,
Well,
and even
the number of cases brought on Biden versus the amount of wins, and the amount of cases brought on Trump versus the amount of wins.
but like where did you get those numbers?
We were going over it one night. I wasn't the one doing it, but I forget the exact numbers too. But I mean, I apologize for not having that data in front of me or memorized.
Okay. All right. So I guess we can move on from that, but like
well
maybe if
before
you're
we
gonna make
do,
if you're gonna make claims like that, it does
all right,
help to.
Absolutely,
all
and
right.
I agree with you.
Before we move on, how do we decide what a law really means until it actually makes it in front of the Supreme Court? Don't we need judicial ruling on laws, especially if there's some sort of blurry part of the law, something, for example, like what arms means, or
Yeah,
what it means to facilitate, or something like. I mean, aren't these things that we need
Convey.
to have clarified?
So the reason you have things like temporary injunctions and preliminary injunctions and emergency orders,
It's so
all
that
this
they can
stuff,
make their way through the court, and that
is
has
because
nothing to
they're
do with
like,
what I
let's
just said.
wait till we have like a court
Yeah, I
decide
get it, but that
this.
has
Yeah.
nothing to do with what I just said.
So you were saying that law isn't really like applicable until it's made it to the Supreme Court and been
I am saying that
evaluated for
law is
application.
generally so broad to include so many things that can be
it's
imagined
not
at the
supposed to
particular
be that
time.
way. That's why
But
we
I
have
think
law
it is. I think it
dictionaries.
is
Hold on.
supposed. I think it is
It
supposed to be
it,
that way
Some
because they
parts of
want
it
to include
definitely.
every. They want to include every scenario they can possibly imagine that would fall under that law, and then they want the courts to narrow it down specifically
so
to make it constitutional. I
you
think it's done that
I
way
think
on a
you
purpose.
no, I think usually Congress passes laws that they think are absolutely just and valid and constitutional, and then there
I
might be
didn't say
parts.
that they didn't.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm sort of agreeing with you. I don't think that the law, any like legislature, state or federal, is thinking about like, well, there are certain laws passed to test things, meaning like we've seen this, right, with
Yeah.
the abortion cases in various states. Like, oh, why all of a sudden are you passing cases that are absolutely in violation of Casey and Roe, right? Like, why would any state do that when it's very clearly unconstitutional? Because they know that the court's going to have to hear it, and they want to see if the law will change, right? Um,
Well,
I think
that's
that's
what
the same
Donald
reason
Trump
that
is doing.
Obama.
He's pushing the borders right now. He's pushing the edges. He's trying to figure out what the exact role of the
I
executive
don't
branch
think
is
so.
according to the Supreme Court. What what do you,
I mean,
Well, I
okay,
could say, hold on, approach real quick. I came up
yeah,
because
go
uh,
ahead.
I was chirping in the comments. You made the assertion about Trump is winning, and there's an article, I think it was in the Times recently, that he has a 97% loss rate. So I think a lot of people are going to see the media about his wins if you're in that media bubble. But Obama had a 45% success rate. And at various and at certain points with the Supreme Court specifically, he actually, I think he achieved 65% in 1 year was his highest. So I would say that
Yeah,
if you
but I don't
just
know,
hear me
dude.
out real quick, approach.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
If you were to see that delta, that would really coincide with what Mojo is saying, that is like you could really take away that would really demonstrate that he is pressing the four corners of the law to have that.
You know what? I would argue that Obama did even more. I mean, Obama locked up more journalists and whistleblowers using the 1917 Espionage Act than all presidents combined. I mean, if you go into each case and the plea bargains that were accepted, and then on top of that, I thought it was a myth, this whole Smith-Munns Act revision that happened under Obama. But recently, I've been doing some real study in this, and I challenge anybody to prove me wrong on this, because I'm open to it. I'm open for someone to prove me wrong.
All right.
Because
Okay, but
don't
we're,
ever say
we're,
that
no,
again.
we're-
Don't ever
we're-
say that
Yeah,
again.
we're pivoting back to Obama.
somebody
Wait,
please prove me
wait,
wrong.
don't ever
No,
say
like-
prove. Wait, hold on. Don't ever say that for somebody to prove you wrong.
I mean,
that
show
is
me
so
the light,
illogical.
man. I don't know
that
how
is the most
to word it.
illogical thing that a person can say.
It
Well,
demands
fine,
effort
whatever.
for us to prove
You
or
say I'm
disprove your
illogical, then
claims.
that's whatever.
No, I mean, like, to expound on that though, my point was if you're losing at such a high rate, it indicates that you are trying to push the limits and you're not succeeding at it necessarily. The fact about the Obama thing too, if I would look at the time and reframe what was going on with whistleblowers, Bradley Manning, you had WikiLeaks, you had a dynamic interaction between media, like an unprecedented interaction time, right? So saying a number, well, this many people were locked up, I go, okay, well, like, give context. I
So
don't
you have-
think that,
you have
but at the
Reese-
same time, though,
I mean,
what he
okay.
did do was expanded and rewrote the FOIA and the transparency laws, and he changed the classification levels that unless something could be justified as state secret, like, it got broadened up that when you were doing a FOIA, there was not as many black lines in it. And I know that for a
So you're
fact.
talking about the Smith-Munns, right?
Yeah,
there,
but
right?
he
So yes,
expanded it
I
under
think it
his
was sold to
administration.
us as that, and they did do that. However, they, I was listening. Not only have I gone to multiple law pages where they give their opinion on this, but even someone who worked for the National Broadcasting, whatever, I forget how, government organization. He worked there as like the top honcho, and he gives his opinion on what happened. I can give you his name if you give me a second.
No. I worked for the government for 20 years. I took part in a few FOIAs on some litigation with Dominion Virginia Power in a case that dealt with Fort Monroe and with BRAC and a bunch of stuff, right? And when we were doing the FOIA, we actually kind of got ruled because we gave so much information that we were trying to use the deliberative process exception for the FOIAs that we were kind of getting pressured and steamrolled. And there was documents that came down from the Department of Defense all the way down through all the levels that actually indicated the policy. So in the reality of what the narrative that was being given to boots on the ground at various levels was transparency. So I know that one guy's...
I know that's how it's sold, and I've read quite a few law opinions on this.
But I'm saying in practice, like, as somebody who has like gone through and the documents, I'm the one, if it's my documents, right? If I'm pulling my emails, I actually, when there's a FOIA request,
I get all that.
But they say
No,
gather
but
all
that's
this
just
stuff,
one
right?
part of it is all I'm saying. That's when I've been reading is, yes, that was one part of it, and that's how they sold it to us. However, when this act was created, basically it was supposed to be used towards, broadcasting out towards other countries for like a soft influence purpose, right? And so, but one of the rules when it under the arguments was they're not allowed to use it on the American people because it could be used to influence elections and so on. But under the revision, they took that out. And so, interesting enough, ever since Obama left office and that happened, I've never seen the media lie this much. I have never seen.
Let me explain. There was many instances that I would say the media got it so wrong that like the secrecy of the government had the opposite effect. is they were looking at it and going, you know what? If we released the truth in this case, there was no national secret. There wasn't a defense purpose. There wasn't a state secret reasoning.
There's a lot of talks. Yeah, the National Defense Act. There's a
No,
lot of things
well, no,
in
no,
that.
no. I'm saying it's the opposite was true. Is the media was getting it wrong in many instances, and what the government found in their assessment was, you know
Wow.
what? There's a lot of times we're keeping things secret, and it's actually to our own detriment. That the truth was fine to release, and so they lean towards transparency, and that's what we
Yeah, I would agree on one side of the act, but not not the other side of the act. I've taken time to really study the media apparatus, throughout the years when we only had so many choices, and then when they were working forever at a loss, and then in the 80s when the family members took over, they turned it into more of a profit model, so we lost a little integrity there. But I mean, this all started for me in 2008 when I read the
Okay,
declassified documents, Operation
oh
Ember,
my God.
if you know what I'm talking about.
Can I just ask that we try to focus more on current events and like let other
This is
people?
so important,
No,
love,
hold
and
on.
I
And
apologize.
I understand. Like, can we focus
What
on
did
current
you
events and
say?
try to like
This is so
let?
important. What?
Love, I always say love.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Did I offend you? Was that?
I would
Yeah.
rather
They
you
Don't
call
not
it
leave
refer to
toots.
me
baby
with any sort
love
of pet
doesn't
name.
fly here.
I
It's
apologize.
disrespectful.
Absolutely.
You
My
you wouldn't
bad.
do that to any of the
It
dudes
comes
on the
out
panel.
naturally,
Yeah, you wouldn't
just
do it to any of the men on the panel, so don't fucking do it to me.
Whoa, damn. So okay, yeah, you got it.
Well, I
Absolutely.
agree
Yeah,
with what
and
you're saying. That's just gross.
I'm
All
going to
right.
step down, but all I wanted to say is, like, in practice, what I'm telling you is what I saw was there was a reason for transparency. There was a reason for domestic release of information, which is the media had no problem speculating incorrectly and very loudly, and the government is not able to defend itself if it continues to have things that are just everything was getting
Yeah.
marked secret for no reason, even though it wasn't. And so that changed under Obama.
We were absolutely told that the Patriot Act wouldn't be used on us too, and here we are today.
Cool.
Just like this.
I mean, I
thing.
guess citing like one thing. This is what I don't like. Citing one thing and like the CIA overturned governments in the '60s. Therefore, what they do today, like it's like a really weak argument. So, but yeah,
It's
I'm gonna
actually quite important as far as I'm
I'm
concerned,
gonna
and I challenge you
I'm gonna step
to
down.
just prove me otherwise, or whatever.
Okay, go ahead. Nope.
I gotta go to sleepy. Hey, good night. Thanks for having me on.
All right.
Good night, Brad.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Nope.
should stop
So
doing that. You don't get to get him yelling. Sorry. Go ahead now.
Yeah, I just would really like it if we could have conversations that are more than two people going back and forth for like half an hour.
My bad.
Yeah, whatever. So getting back to this whole like winning thing, because I was actually trying to have a little bit of a point and kept getting pivoted away from it.
Sure.
It's fine. Would you, whether he is winning or not, I would say the difference in how his administration has responded to negative actions from the court, whether that's an injunction, whether that's a loss in the ruling, or it's just like demands for discovery material. I would say that the difference between like the previous Trump administration and this administration significantly is that they are not following court orders. Like they're not just being obstructive in the discovery process. They are saying that a Supreme Court order does not mean what it does, and like they haven't even asked for Garcia's release at all. They have not claimed in any legal document to even ask for his release, which is like the bare minimum of facilitation.
You guys are still
right?
on this guy? Like, I get.
Yeah, no, yeah, because it's important. And so, like, again, like,
Go
I
ahead,
can
go
bring
ahead.
up other examples if you need me to. That's just like a very
Well,
blatant
I mean,
one because it's the
all
Supreme
I'm saying
Court.
is
It's
if
the
we're going to
Supreme.
talk
Let
about
me finish
non-judicial
talking,
removal.
please. Hello, did you fucking
Sorry.
not hear me?
I'm sorry.
Continuing
Go
to
ahead.
speak. So
I just said I'm sorry.
difference
Go ahead.
approach is that previously the Trump administration would do bad things. They would get checked in court, and more or less they would like play ball with the court. And when they eventually got ruled down, they would comply. That is not happening this term. That is the difference. That is why people are focused on the Garcia case, focused on other legal cases. It's not because we care a lot about Garcia. It's not because we have TDS. It's not because Orange Man bad. It's because he is acting significantly. His administration is holding significantly different legal positions than they did even in his first term. And it is concerning in terms of constitutional continuance and all of our rights. That is why we are reacting to it differently. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, I mean, it makes sense, but at least allow me to rebut in a sense, you know? So a couple things. And I'm not trying to tip for tat, but there was a lot of non-judicial removals under the Obama administration. Quite
Most
a
of them
few.
were
But then,
expedited removals that happened within
You got to
14
let him
days of
finish
the
too,
process.
no?
just said,
I know, but
yeah,
like I'm so
yeah,
fucking
you
sick
just
of
gave
this
me
point.
shit about that, but you can obviously
Yeah, but
rebut
let
me. I
him
have no
finish.
problem with that. Because if anything,
I
yeah.
also like asked that we didn't go back to Obama, and that is the only argument.
I
can
you know what, and I, with all due respect, it's a good thing to compare, and if I may, please, you can talk all of whatever you want. I'm just allow me to get my point of view. Okay, so we had the non-judicial removal process, and it is true that in the civil matter of immigration, they don't get all the exact same rights as us. It is true. But we also have 8 USC 1158, which under the discretion of the Secretary of State or the Attorney General, if they deem someone a national security risk, even it says even under classified information in the law, and that they're able to do so, without due process,
That's still
right?
a judicial process.
I mean, and I would argue the guy sells 17 judges over the entire span of him being here and close to $5 million in taxpayer money defending his ass. But I digress.
I don't really give a shit. The Supreme Court said to facilitate his release from El Salvador.
No,
like,
they asked to
that's it.
define the
That's
word
literally it.
facilitate.
No, they did not. Would you like me to pull up the
Oh.
fucking thing again?
Yeah, they said that the district court needs to define effectuate, but they said that the district court
Effectuate, that's correct, yeah.
that the district court properly ordered the Trump administration to facilitate the release. That's the other part of this that a lot of times gets skipped over. It's not just his being brought back, it's also the release. So that is where the defiance comes in. And we could talk about which president did non-judicial deportation. We could sit here and argue about this all night, seriously, but at the end of the day, Obama did not defy any court orders in defiance of judicial due process or judicial orders. That is the problem. We could sit here and dissect every single little aspect of this guy's case. But at the end of the day, when the Supreme Court says, especially in a 9-0 ruling, you need to facilitate the district court. Actually, to be very legally technical about this, when the district court ordered you to do this, it was proper. So get the fuck out of here. It wasn't even the Supreme Court telling him to do that. It said, hey, actually, you do need to listen to the district court because they can order that. Go ahead.
I'm not a lawyer, right? Obviously, I'm just kind of a autodidact in some things, but in this particular case, and even under the Alien Enemies Act, in the form of incursion, right?
You're going past the point, though. I just said
hold
that
on.
we can sit here and
So the
dissect.
Supreme
Okay,
Court is
go
going
ahead.
to see this. Okay, well, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying that you're going back to we don't have to even know what.
Fine, I'll make it clear and plain. Impeach him then, and then see what happens.
Impeach Trump? Is that where you're at?
Yeah, if he's doing things against the law, isn't he up for impeachment? Because as far as I know,
that's why we're all calling
this
for
guy
it.
was an MS-13 member, right? And it's actually clear if you look at the MJ and then this smiley face and Espanol is the same, right?
Court orders?
And then
Can we focus on the court orders
if that's
for
just a coincidence,
Like I said,
Are you capable of focusing on the court orders, or are you going to continue to pivot away
the
from
president's job
the
is to
fact that
protect the
he
American
is not,
people.
that his administration is not complying with very clear legal orders repeatedly? That
The
is what we are
president's
trying to talk
first
with you
job
about, and you are
is to
unable to
protect the American
you are
people.
unable to engage with that aspect of the situation.
Yeah, someone
Are you
says I'm
still
a
talking about the
gang member, but
facilitate?
however,
Are you still talking about the facilitate?
effectuate. Yeah.
No,
There's
facilitate.
yeah.
No,
Can I have the big
effectuate.
screen,
No.
please? Okay.
No. Wait, are you
No,
still
no,
talking
no.
about?
Effectuate.
Are you still talking about the Supreme Court saying you have to facilitate?
Effectuate.
No,
Define the
stop
word
doing that
effectuate.
You are
approach.
so confused. You are so confused. What the Supreme Court said, and Kate said it, but like maybe Mojo, do you want to say it? Because maybe he just can't like hear. I don't know.
it's the frequency of our female voices.
Yeah. So
Well, no, hold on. What I want to say is that isn't offering a plane, isn't that facilitating?
no,
Facilitate
Mojo.
his
So I actually,
release.
yeah, facilitate his release from custody in El Salvador.
Well, they did that already too. He's in a different place now,
Custody
right?
in El Salvador, not custody in CCOT.
Is that what it said? Custody in El
Yes.
Salvador?
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
pull
so they
that one
offered a
back up.
plane. So they offered a plane. They'll come pick him up as soon as the
Okay,
president releases him.
all right, but the thing is, Mojo, that they haven't even claimed in any court document to have even asked for his release, and the
But they don't have
district
to. They
court.
offered a plane.
All right, here I have the definition of facilitate in legal context pulled up here. This is a ruling from Noam versus Garcia from that district judge that is managing that case. And it was a ruling that came out around the terms for the discovery process. Which for anyone listening and that doesn't know, that's the process during which both parties are able to ask each other for various forms of evidence, testimony, information. It's like the information gathering phase of any case.
On the
So
23rd of last month, right? Or 22nd, they had testimony in regards or something like that. Is that what you're bringing up?
no, this was actually before that. Yeah, I can bring up more recent documents if you'd like, but I feel this
No
one
big deal.
is important because it is where they laid out the framework for why they are doing discovery, and they also like went through a bunch of definitions. So this is on page 4 of 8. It's document 79 on the docket. If you'd like to look it up yourself, I apologize that it's like
Oh, I
weird
don't need to.
on
I
the
absolutely
screen.
still support Trump what he did because what he's doing is protecting American
Okay,
citizens.
good for you. I'm not done talking. So it says notably to facilitate means to make the occurrence of something easier, to render less difficult. Facilitate Black's Law Dictionary, which I know you conservatives love the
Yeah,
Black's
doesn't
Law
that mean
Dictionary.
sending a plane makes it easier?
All right, okay, let me keep going.
To answer the
So
comment
then
real quick, I grew up in an MS-13 war zone. Absolutely. They were born here in Los Angeles. Go ahead.
They were. At least you know that. So it gives some other like English dictionary facilitates. So like they're playing ball, with this like definition game. The judge is playing ball with the government and going through it. And then it says defendants therefore remain obligated at minimum to take the steps available to them towards aiding, assisting, I can't actually remember what, I think it's aiding, assisting, or making easier Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and ensuring his returning his status quo ante. But the record reflects that the defendants have done nothing at all. Instead, the defendants obliquely suggested that to facilitate is limited to taking all available steps to remove any domestic obstacles that would otherwise impede the alien's ability to return here. The fallacy in the defendant's argument is twofold. First, in the immigration context, as it were, facilitating return of those wrongly deported can and has included more extensive governmental efforts endorsed in prior precedent and DHS. Hold, please. Thank you for your patience. And DHS publications. Thus, the court cannot credit that facilitating the endorsed release is as limited as defendants suggest. Oh god, this one is very small. Sorry. Second
Is
and
this
most.
from JGG?
No, this is from Noam versus Garcia. Second and most fundamentally, defendants appear to have done nothing to aid in Abrego Garcia's release from custody and return to the United States to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been, which is a direct quote from the Supreme Court case that I think gets left out a lot. It's not just that they need to facilitate his release, it's that his case needs to be handled as it would have been had defendant not been wrongfully deported. The defendants, or had Garcia not been wrongfully deported. Thus, defendants attempt to insist or to
What page is this on?
This is on page 5. To skirt the issue by
There's only 4
redefining.
pages of Gnome.
So this is the district court. This is document 79 on the docket of the district court case for Garcia versus Nome, which is the main court case that got appealed up to the Supreme Court.
Okay, but the Supreme Court made a ruling. So
right,
why are we
and
looking
this,
at
and the Supreme
district
and this,
court?
I know Maga Mojo. The Supreme Court's ruling basically sent it back down to this district court to continue to handle the case, and they did rule that they needed to they were right to order to facilitate his release from custody in El Salvador. They also ruled that the court needed to the district court, the lower court, right, needed to clarify what effectuate meant. And so that is what they are doing in this discovery process, so they can give more specific orders of how that effectuation will take place.
What's your legal opinion on the word effectuate? Just curious.
I am not a lawyer, and I don't really honestly have enough I don't have enough case law knowledge around that specific word in the immigration context to give you a very solid opinion.
That's all right. That's a respectful answer. Yeah.
Didn't they just choose to remove the word effectuate?
No. They said that they can't uphold the order to effectuate, but that the district
that would
court
be a
needed to
removal
declare.
then. Yeah.
So I would argue that that the last time we used this with the Japanese, like people always like to bring up the internment camps, but they also don't. They leave out, the fact that it was absolutely necessary in so many cases with the espionage and all sorts of things that were happening with the Japanese. Well, the ones that were here. So a lot of those were removed the exact same way. And we can argue
You are so
whether that was
bad at
legal
this, it
then.
pisses me off. God
Yeah.
damn it.
Can I just finish one more sentence and then you can take
Absolutely, you're doing amazing.
So then it says, thus defendants attempt to skirt the issue by redefining facilitate is contrary to both law and logic. So it just laid out very clearly what facilitate has meant in this legal context historically, what it means in legal definitions, and what the government has failed to do is literally anything. Like anything. They have not even formally claimed to have asked for his release. So and they have not. I don't think they've actually shown any evidence that they've provided a plane. But I don't see how that matters, Maga Mojo, if they can't even ask the government of El Salvador for his release. That's step one.
Because the president of El Salvador has already stated that he's not going to return him.
Well,
he stated that he's not going to return the terrorists back to the United States.
He's pissed
so
at
that question was asked by a journalist.
Okay, but that was his answer, right? That was his answer, right? So we already know what the president of El Salvador says.
This is actually hearsay, so
no, it's on video.
It is, but so it's not been submitted as any sort of proof in court.
Yeah, hearsay is any statement, out of court statement that is asserted for the truth of the matter.
Okay, so all they have to do is show the video in court, and then the president of El Salvador already said it's already said.
That doesn't make it true.
What do you mean it doesn't? It's on fucking video. What do you mean it doesn't make it true?
They have to put them under oath.
Everybody saw it.
Well, they have to put him under. They would have to put him under oath and ask
No, they
consent.
don't. They can't put a non-American
Otherwise,
citizen, a
it's
president of
hearsay.
another
It's
country.
not.
Yeah,
No,
it's out
it's
of
not.
respect
It's
for
on
the other
fucking
country's
video.
sovereignty.
It's
that
not.
they
It's under.
can't.
Okay,
It's
hold
on
on.
video,
Calm
for
down.
Christ's
Maga
sake.
Mojo, calm down. Calm down. Calm down. It's hearsay doesn't mean that like it's not admissible as evidence entirely. It just means that it has an objection to it that is available. Does that make
Hearsay.
sense?
Awesome. Go ahead and object. It's on fucking video. He
Yeah,
already
there's
said he's
Can
not
I
going to return them.
can I
there
throw
are
in on this real quick?
Let Kate talk first because she's actually a lawyer,
Okay.
please.
no, I was gonna say number one with effectuate. It's not actually written anywhere, but just legally, the reason that they didn't say that you have to, the Supreme Court didn't affirm the district court's effectuate, is because technically, like, if they cannot order, like, no court can order the president to make that happen because it can't. Like we all recognize that. He cannot be ordered to actually secure the return. But facilitate is you better do everything in your power to make this happen because you have to right your wrong, right? The second thing just about hearsay, it's just like a pet peeve of mine. It's like hearsay is like very, very narrow. And there's a lot of exceptions and exemptions from hearsay, but you cannot introduce statements like that for the truth of the matter, which this would be, which is the truth of the matter is that Bukele is saying that he either can't or won't return him. So yes, this would be.
Yeah, the truth of the matter, like I said, is on video. Everybody saw it.
But so Kate, my understanding is that like so if you're doing a deposition and there's a hearsay objection to something said, like that will still be shown in the deposition video, but it will be considered differently by the court because of the objection, correct?
When we're talking
So
about a non-U.S. citizen and another non-U.S.
Hold on,
citizen.
I would like just let her answer my question, then we can move on, please.
So what happens is if somebody's in a deposition, the person talking on the deposition can be introduced because it is under oath. You actually take an oath before you start your deposition. But if they're like, oh, Joe Schmo told me this,
Yep.
and you're saying that in a deposition, it would be objected to at the deposition. And then you have these, like, they're called like designations. And so then you would have objections rolled on before it's shown in court. And the court would decide if it's hearsay at that time before it's shown to the jury, for example.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just curious how that process exactly worked. So.
Yeah, no worries.
Awesome. Still a video that all 300 million Americans that watched it saw it. So
Then why
I don't know why you're arguing
but
against it.
Mojo, why hasn't the government claimed that they asked for his
Because it
return
hasn't
then?
made it to the Supreme Court yet. Who cares what the
No.
district court
Okay,
says?
so are you aware that the Supreme Court, by returning it back to that district court, they basically put the ball back in that judge's hands. They said, you get to rule on how this case goes.
Yeah, except he
And
gets to
pa-
appeal this
part-
ruling too.
Right, but part of what that judge ruled, and the government has been complying with this somewhat, is to do a daily, it's now a more periodic, but at first it was a daily update on the status of Garcia, of his return, of the facilitation, of any details that they can provide. They've been doing those updates very regularly. They have been providing information that has been like compliant, but they have not once claimed that they have asked for his release. Never once.
They don't
in
have
any
to ask.
in
They were
any of
already
those
told.
statements of
As
fact.
I said, they were already told that he won't return them.
And you think that a journalist asking is going to get the same answer as the
It's not a
administration
journalist.
of the most
It's not a
of the most powerful?
It's not a journalist asking. It's the fucking
was a
president
journalist
of the
who
goddamn
asked.
country we're talking about.
Okay, but it was a journalist who asked the president. And what I'm asking you is, do you think that that question would have a different weight in a diplomatic conversation with the government versus a press conference when it comes from a journalist? Because it definitely came from a journalist. I encourage you to
Objection,
pull up.
speculation.
No, I can pull up the transcript if you need me to.
Yeah, again, objection, speculation.
Oh my god.
Maga Mojo is so funny. No, but for real, Maga Mojo, it was definitely a journalist who asked. Otherwise, they would have.
It doesn't matter, as I said. The president said what he said. It doesn't matter who asked the question.
It does because a journalist has no diplomatic power.
That doesn't matter either. The president made the statement. It doesn't matter if there was a question asked or not. The president made the statement.
You really think that the most powerful country in the world doesn't have the diplomatic influence to ask a president to change his mind?
Objection asked and answered.
I don't think you answered that, Maga Mojo.
I did answer that.
If we were in a deposition, you'd still have to answer.
Yeah. Just saying.
Also, you don't present evidence to the Supreme Court. That's a misconception. Actually, the reason, kind of like the importance of having preliminary injunctions and all of these other things happen in the district court, because they are the ones that accept evidence into the record, and both the appellate court and the Supreme Court, they review it on very specific standards of review. Sometimes it's de novo, which means like they look at everything. Sometimes it's an abuse of discretion. There are very different review standards as well. So there is no process for you to present
Then
evidence.
there's still another court in between the district court and the Supreme Court. They can present it there.
Would you like to see the Fourth District Appellate Court ruling, Mojo? Because
It's already gone to the appellate. Is this going to the Supreme Court right now?
Well, no, but so this particular case has been ruled on not in favor of DHS or the government in both a district court repeatedly, Supreme Court when the government, not the Garcia attorneys, the government appealed it up to the Supreme Court. And then again, the government appealed it up to the Fourth District Appellate Court last month. So
Okay,
I can
so
pull
we're
up
still
that
waiting
ruling
on
if you would
appellate.
like me.
Yeah, we're still waiting on the appellate
they
court.
already ruled on it. And it was actually a Reagan judge, a Reagan appointed judge, who issued the ruling. And I would love to share that with you. If you're
Yeah,
curious
no,
about it.
I don't want to hear it again. It's the fucking
It should
poetry
never matter
shit.
who
It's fucking
appointed a judge.
Shakespearean. Shakespearean bullshit is what that is.
Do you think that's an activist judge, the Reagan
I
appointed
do,
judge?
absolutely. When they're going to write that kind of flourish in a fucking ruling, that's ridiculous.
Mojo,
I hate
do you
the
think
fact
that
that
judge
even
should be
activist
deported
judges
without any due
exist.
process?
Well, I mean, you guys didn't hold that same, tone for the J6ers that didn't get due process. No speedy trial. They were pushed around for multiple years. To
Because
different
they're terrorists. Because they're terrorists.
Yeah, I would
Yes.
argue against that, but I'm not going to do it on this live. If you want to meet me in Discord someday, it's in the bio. We can have this discussion.
All right, we can talk about that later or whatever. You guys can talk about it whenever, but I still want to go back to this particular case because, so you're saying that the appellate court already ruled on this, so the government will actually appeal it to the Supreme Court, and it'll make it back to the Supreme Court, and they will make the argument, they will make the argument in front of the Supreme Court that they offered every possible thing that they could do by offering the plane and opening up the border, and having the president make that statement, and then the Supreme Court's going to have to rule, well, that wasn't enough, and they're going to have to send it back down to the district court again.
That might kind of be sort of what happens. However, I would just clarify a couple parts about what you just said. So when they appealed it up to the Fourth District Appellate Court, it was basically arguing that they should not have to comply with the discovery process. And I believe they were asking for an injunction pending appeal, and a writ of mandamus, if I recall correctly. So they're kind of asking for everything to stop while they appealed the discovery process further, and the appellate court shot it down like very, very clearly. So since then, they have been very obstructively, but they have been complying with the discovery process. So that is happening right now.
And who are they giving the discovery to?
The discovery is shared in a court case. The discovery is shared with the court as well as
Which court?
like both parties. That would be the district court.
Okay, so it's gone back down to the district court. So they didn't actually appeal it to the Supreme Court. They just
They appealed it to the appellate court, and the appellate court upheld the district court's ruling.
Yeah, that's fine. I understand that. You've already said that like 20 times. What I asked you was that they didn't appeal it to the Supreme Court. Then it's been sent down back down to the district court to get them to comply to the order or whatever, and they agreed to do that.
I just hope
To
we.
work because these orders are not these orders are what's called interlocutory, which is what that writ of mandamus means, is that you're trying to appeal an order that's actually not supposed to be appealed. And that's why if you've ever heard of like writ of certiorari, it's like very
That
weird
just means
Latin.
the ruling of the court as a
No,
whole.
it means that it's the petition that you send to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says yes or no, we're going to take this case. So
So
when
in regards, go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, I was just going to say that that's the reason that like it keeps getting sent back. It's like ping ponging. This happens
Yeah,
with a bunch of different types of cases.
yeah. Well, it doesn't just
Supreme
happen with the
Court take
cases.
on.
Donald Trump's lawyers happen to be very fucking good at what they do because they do this on a regular basis. They get things ping pong back and forth as long as they fucking can to make sure it takes as long as they can,
It's
right?
frivolous obstruction.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the way our court system's set up.
Do you
They're
think
just
that
using the court
do you
system the
think
way it's
that
supposed to be
lawyers
used.
who are
Exploited.
do you think that lawyers who are like excessively obstructive to court orders and processes are good lawyers?
I'd say they're very damn good lawyers for their fucking clients.
Yeah, I mean, if they can pull off and
Okay,
accomplish without breaking the actual law, and or at least not
wait, hold
having
on.
to worry about
I
anything.
really need to address something in what Mojo just said. Do you think that Donald Trump or the administration is the client of the DOJ?
The DOJ, is the DOJ arguing this? Is it
Yes.
Pam Bondi arguing this? Is
It's
it her office
it's the
arguing this?
the DOJ is the defendants in this case.
Well, if they are representing the people, then they are, yeah, they're doing their job because they think they're representing the people correctly.
Wait, it is the DOJ as the defendant, you're saying?
So they are not listed as the defendant,
Yeah, I
but
was gonna
they
say, 'cause
are
if I looked-
they are defending it because it's a case against the government.
Okay, because it's under the executive branch. Okay, so I mean, I get it because the immigration courts are not like.
Am I correct on that, Kate?
Yeah, I think you are right because the
I just
immigration
want to double
courts
check with
are
attorney
under
Kate.
the executive branch. That would make sense.
Kate, was I right about that?
Yeah, the DOJ is counsel for the defendants. There's like a bunch of so like when you sue the government, you have to sue the correct department, which is why you see like Nome or different people like actually like their names are named in the lawsuit as defendants. You're suing the government, so you have to sue a representative of the government. But the DOJ, those lawyers are the ones that are representing the government. But ultimately, they are lawyers for the people. It's just when there's an administration in power under the executive branch, they are representing the government's interests, which is like allegedly protecting the people's interests.
Well,
So-
the people voted in Donald Trump, so obviously they're arguing for the people because the people wanted Donald Trump to be there and doing what he's doing.
And to do this, yeah. I mean, it was what we voted for.
They're keeping the American people safe from gangsters.
Well, it's a little more than that. I believe you guys can argue this opinion, but yes, I do believe that that there is an incursion as funded by a government MS-13, and honestly, I don't think that this whole situation was organic as it's happening in every corner of Western society at the exact same time. We did see the Facebook group ads and the flyers
This
around
is
South
such
America.
a bad argument approach.
I don't care. And let me explain.
What a
Let me explain.
broad
I'm giving my opinion. So
it's just a bad argument, man. You guys are
that's
losing
fine.
on
That's
this
fine.
all
And
the time.
you can call this a bad argument, but allow me to finish my
What is
argument.
Western society?
Wait,
So-
is he?
so, I
wait,
mean, all over
approach.
Europe,
Were you asking if it was like a false flag operation?
Well, no. So we see 900 NGOs involved, right? And then we see Alejandro Mayorkas, who was on the board of one of these big NGOs, which I think is a complete conflict of interest, if you ask me. But so my point here is that I don't think that the Democratic Party cares about the values and even the Constitution. Myself, that's my opinion. But let me say this. So I believe, as MAGA, I believe in immigration. I believe in that. Yes, immigrants are important. However, I think it needs to be a slow process for a reason, and this is why. That more people came through that border illegally or through non-ports of entry, unvetted and so on, whether you call it legal or not, depending on immigration code. In 4 years, more than many 50 years maybe through Ellis Island or more. Okay, so I'm to the belief, and this is because I've read up on some stuff recently, that when you overfill your country with people who haven't assimilated properly, okay, some historians believe that that this was one of the key factors that led to the fall of the Roman Empire. In this, you can go. I can give you the historians if you want to go look them up. But there's a few guys that agree on this historian wise that while Rome was at war.
What are you talking about?
Well, I'll explain.
No, man.
I'm almost done. I see the runway. My wing flaps are down. Let me land it, please. So
Western chauvinist.
So while there was a war going on the north, a bunch of migrants came into the south of Rome, and these people, Rome was all about having immigrants. They didn't have a problem with it, but you had to assimilate to their society, right? But these people brought their own values and even their own ideas of government.
Oh my God! Are you fucking doing replacement theory? Are you fucking doing replacement theory right now?
Well, hold on.
He's one of those save Europe type of people, bro.
So in Europe, we see Sharia law.
Jesus Christ!
Hold on, guys.
Maga Mojo is breaking character for
this. In Europe, we see Sharia law courts being pulled up.
He's fucking doing it. I can't play the racist.
I can give you examples in Los Angeles.
I can't fucking do it.
Look at, dude. I grew up in the very first